Good morning, Brampton and everyone. Welcome to our meeting of Committee of Council on November the 13th, 2019. All members of committee are present today with the exception of Councillor Dillon, who is away on other municipal business, and Councillor Singh, whose absence is noted as personal. Committee of Council does not make final decisions. It only makes recommendations that are presented to City Council for approval as resolutions or final decisions. The recommendations are presented to City Council in a set of committee minutes summarizing the meeting and its recommendations. Hello to all the viewers watching online, live, and also later on today. Hashtag Team Brampton. The first item of the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Members of committee, there are a few agenda changes identified on the package in front of you. I will ask the City Clerk to review the changes for today's agenda since its publication last Friday.
Madam Chair, members of committee, members of staff, and the public attending or watching today's meeting, there's only one list to change, which is shown on the screen, which is the item 9.3.1, which are the summary of recommendations from the Brampton School Traffic Safety Council meeting of last Thursday, November 7th. This meeting occurred after the agenda was published, so the recommendations have been published on the city's website, and those are the changes at this time, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Are there any other additions, changes, or deletions to the agenda this morning? Councillor Willens.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair. We have an announcement coming, but it won't be announced till 11:30. So when the person arrives, there'll be a special announcement at 11:30 that I'd like to add that to the agenda. It's regarding this weekend.
So, Madam Chair, that would be proposed item 4.2, an event coming up this weekend and scheduled for 11:30 this morning, the announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Councillor Fortini.
Yeah, thank you, through the chair. I just wanted to add a discussion on our assistance or EA under Louis.
Through you, Madam Chair, if there's a proposed item regarding executive assistance to the councillors, that would be under corporate services as new business item 8.3.3.
Okay, if there are no other members, I do have one amendment to the agenda. We have a delegation here from the David Suzuki Foundation as a follow-up debrief from the event that happened last week. If we could add that delegation to the agenda, that would be great. And that would be item number 6.3, and I would ask that we bring that delegation forward first because it deals with climate change, and the GR presentation also deals with climate change, so it's a good segue. Correct, after the GR. Okay. Can I get a motion from Council to approve the amended agenda? Motion from Councillor Fortini. All those in favor? Next item of the agenda is declarations of conflict of interest. Do any members of council have any declaration of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act for any matter to be considered in today's agenda? No members. Next item is consent. The items listed with an asterisk on the agenda are considered to be routine and non-controversial. The consent motion is to adopt this matter on today's agenda without the need for a separate discussion on the item unless the member requests a separate discussion. Do any members wish to add or remove an item from consent? Councillor, Mr. Mayor.
Just ignoring as objections, we could add 8.24 and 9.25.
Peter.
1, 2, 4.
I hit my button before anybody else.
So 8.24 and 8.25? 9.25.
Yeah, 8.24 and 9.25. If no councillors have any questions?
2.4.
Okay. I have next Councillor Vicente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Move for item 9.2.5 to be moved, 9.2.4 into consent.
(9.2.4). Okay. And no other members have anything to add?
Yes, no.
Councillor Paleshi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to remove 921 from consent.
Item 9.2.1 to be removed from consent. Great. May I have a motion to approve the agenda for today's meeting? Councilor Vicente, all those in favor? Hands? Thank you. That is passed. Next item on the agenda is announcement. And our first announcement is item number 4.1, an announcement regarding the Gift of Giving Back event, Regeneration Thrift Store, 253 Queen Street East, November 19th to 22nd. Glenn McIntyre from Brampton Hockey, Bruce Dodds, Hebron, and Ted Brown for Regeneration Outreach Community are here today for this announcement. Welcome, Glenn, Bruce, and Ted.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Mayor, councilors, members of the city staff and audience. Our event, we'd appreciate the support and thank you for allowing us to come and speak about it today. This is our 5th annual year of raising food for a charity called the Gift of Giving Back. It's more about raising food for those in need, for sure. And we've partnered with Regeneration in the last 5 years as the major beneficiary of the program, along with St. Andrew's Food Bank and St. Louis Outreach and the Community Food Share Program in Brampton. So we're trying to engage our young athletes in getting involved in the community. And they go out, they canvass neighborhoods, they target grocery stores, and what they're asking for is donations for food. They actually come and drop it off, sort it into bins, and we're on target for about 100,000 pounds of food this year to raise in those 4 days. It's feasible. In the 5 years now, we're just over 350,000 pounds total. So our community has certainly been stepping up. This year, we have Brampton minor baseball on board, helping us out. Brampton lacrosse is helping us out. And girls soccer, Brams United Soccer is jumped on board. So the event is growing, the word is getting out there, and we'd certainly appreciate any support we can get from council. I brought you a gift today. It's a blue bag. It's called the Gift of Giving Back. What we're going to ask you to do is fill it up and bring it back. It's pretty easy. So I'll leave these here for you. I'll let Bruce say a few words.
On behalf of Regeneration and the other beneficiaries, we'd really like to thank Brampton Amateur Hockey for taking this on every year. We all know that in our sector, we have these seasons of generosity. Thanksgiving, which we've just come out of, and we have Christmas coming and Easter. But around summertime, we've always come into those lean months where the shelves are bare and the cry for food goes out over the radio and media. In Brampton, since the Gift of Giving Back, we haven't had that desperate situation. And it's largely because of the kids doing what they do through the Gift of Giving Back. I also want to thank you for your support for this year for the tables and barriers for the parking area. We really appreciate it. This is a very key event, and we really appreciate Brampton for all the support. Thank you.
I just wanted to also thank you as well, and just looking at that 350,000 pounds of food that's been collected in the last 5 years, that translates into 269,000 meals that were provided to people in need. That's an incredible number. I don't like the goal of $100,000 or 100,000 pounds this year. I think it should be more like 150 or even 200,000 pounds of food that this city can collect. The reality of these bags, and you as councillors, you can contribute, several hundred pounds of food in just these few bags. And imagine, 1,000 of these bags being out, or 2,000 or 3,000 of these bags being out, and people having the ability to bring food in. We can meet the need of many people across this city. We're thankful for Regeneration. We're thankful for Glenn's leadership and Brampton Minor Hockey's leadership in this whole thing over the last number of years. We're acting as a hub in our new. We have space in the thrift store that we have created over on Queen Street, and this year we're going to be able to collect all the food in that location and be able to store that for distribution to other charities across the city of Brampton. This food is collected here. This food will stay here. This food will feed hungry people here. And so everything that you can do to get the word spread this coming week about collecting food, we can surpass that $100,000, or 100,000. I wish it was $100,000. 100,000 pound goal with your help in social media and just spreading the word. Tuesday through Friday next week, from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. Over at 253 Queen Street East. There will be places that people can bring food in. I believe we can do it. And I think by next Friday, we're going to have a total of 200,000 pounds with your help. So thank you.
Thank you very much for your delegation, for all you do. There are some questions from council. Councillor Bowman.
Thank you very much, through you, Madam Chair. Great to see you guys here. I will be there as usual. There are a number of members on council who have participated in this in the past. Councillor Willens and myself, and Councillor Fortini, who has been known to drive the forklifts around there, moving the big containers of food around as well. It's an amazing thing to see these kids bringing in food, and they know what the food is for. And they bring it in, big smiles, they sort it, they put it in bins, they help out wherever they can, they challenge other hockey teams. The funny thing to me is that the city of Burlington held their gift of giving back last week. Now, they've been doing it for a number of years, but they managed to get over 400,000 pounds of food. 400,000 pounds from Burlington. That's basically a pound for every single person in that city. Now, if Brampton got 1 pound of food, 1 pound, that's like 3 cans of soup. If we did that, we'd have 600,000 pounds for this to be distributed to the food banks. And last year it was a monumental moment. We hit 96,000 pounds of food, and we were just that much short. But it's very, very good until you talk to the food banks and they say, this is wonderful, that'll take us through the first quarter of the year. Yeah. The first quarter of the year. 50 tons of food. So we hope everybody will get out. I would ask council to fill up the bags, bring it over. We always appreciate volunteers there to help sort the food, fold the bags. That's my job, but there's only about 7,000 of them to fold this, so it takes 3 nights. But please join us. It's a great thing. It's growing every year. We're pleased to have more sports involved this year, and if we can grow it over the next number of years to the point that Burlington and Oakville have, we'll be in fantastic shape here. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Williams.
Thank you. Thanks so much for coming here and telling us about this. I think it's just going to expand and grow. Did you say if the Canadettes, the girls hockey team for Brampton, is participating?
They've been invited many times in the past.
Yeah?
And that's all I'll comment.
Okay. Good to know. My daughter plays with the Canadettes, so I will be encouraging at least her team to participate.
Absolutely. We welcome anybody.
Thank you. I'm glad you welcome anybody. This is great. And I know you kind of gave the dates, but do you have any social media links or tiles that we can post to our social media areas? Or
there's a Twitter account, Gift of Giving Back Brampton, I believe. Hashtag Kids Feeding Kids. If you hashtag that, people in Burlington, Oakville, they're all aware of that hashtag, and they will retweet or share that with anybody. Our Brampton Hockey website also promotes the event.
Okay. So if we go onto the Brampton Hockey website, then we can find like a
You
link
should
or
be
any
able to
information on there?
find whatever you're looking for.
Awesome, and then that way we can tweet it out from there.
Yeah,
Great, thank you so much.
thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Willens.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Glenn, for coming in. Thanks, Ted. Thanks.
Thanks, Doug.
It was amazing the first year I got involved with this, with Councillor Bowman and Councillor Fortini, I believe. We were having a hard time finding a place to actually put the food, and I thought, how big can this food bank be, or this food drive be? And so I started going around a little worried that I thought, okay, let's help out as much as we can. I think Councillor Bowman and I filled up a shopping cart, brought it down, and I couldn't believe how much food you had collected just that first time doing it. It was amazing. What really I was impressed with was the kids. The kids are like just out there. Every grocery store I went to, there was a couple of kids, with their jerseys on, with the bags out in front of the store. Right throughout our area, anyway. I know they were up in the Heart Lake area. They were out in the Ward 6 area, and they were down in Wards 1 and 5 and 3 and 4. And so it was fantastic. But keep up the good work. You've got a great person from Burlington helping us. Her husband's a local lawyer here. So it's great to have them on board as well, and I just can see this thing growing bigger and bigger, and you've got a great location now. I know we had challenges previously, and I think that it was Cardinal Lazy that stepped up to the plate, and they were wonderful, but it's gotten so big now that we can't use their gym, so that's even encouraging, and I know that location on Queen Street is going to be a lot easier to get the food in and out and get it distributed. So keep up the good work, and I won't be there on the 19th, but I'll certainly be there the 20th and 21st. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
if I could just add, we do have some guests coming out for the kids and for the adults. Santa Claus is making an appearance, I guess after he finishes with the parade this weekend. We have some Star Wars characters coming, and rumor has it the mayor is actually dropping in as well. So it'll be a busy 4 days for sure.
Thank you very much, Councillor, and also for the response. And we can get confirmation from the mayor right now, Mayor Brown.
Well, I can confirm that rumor. Of course, I'll be there. I just want to say thank you to Brampton Hockey. You're teaching great values to these kids and helping highlight that in a city we all want to pitch in and help. And I just think this is a wonderful initiative. And I was going to say, I'm sure if you leave some bags here, that we would all love to participate too. And when we come, to bring a full bag as well.
Perfect, thank you.
Just don't fill them with chickpeas.
Okay.
Thank you so much, and thank you again for your delegation. I do have one question from the chair. Is there like a flyer or something that, for example, if my son wanted to go door to door asking my neighbors for donations, something to leave with the neighbors so they know where to go and where to drop something off?
We'll email that out to all council today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, and thanks again for all your work.
Yeah, thank you. I'll leave the bags right here.
So the next item on the agenda is the government relations. Materials have been distributed electronically to committee by the CAO's office. Lowell Rubin Vaughn, Office of the CAO, is here to respond to any questions from council and perhaps give us an overview of the presentation you have.
Thank you very much, and through council, in the efforts to expedite this and get to the big part of this presentation. I'll just go through this relatively quickly. Happy to answer any questions on the first part, but then hand it over to my colleague Pam Cooper, who's going to present on the Global Covenant of Mayors initiative, which is a fantastic initiative for the city of Brampton. Tomorrow there is a regional council. There are a couple of agenda items, including Derek Boyce from Recreation is going to be presenting on the 2 community hubs initiatives in the city of Brampton, so hopefully we can get the support heading into the regional council budget process. Last week we presented a little bit on the new animal welfare, so as part of your package we just wanted to dive a little bit deeper into that, and we can definitely provide further updates as the legislation makes its way through the Queen's Park. There was a couple questions on open for business, so we are working with economic development to identify ways to support the red tape reduction, ways that we can support economic development activity within the city of Brampton. Last week I did provide an overview of the fall economic statement, including potential implications for the city of Brampton. For the most part, the fall economic statement was a re-announcement of announcements that have been previously made by this provincial government, in particular from the last provincial budget. Nothing additional for these particular buckets or priorities for the City of Brampton. There were some tax relief for small businesses and some other little nuggets that was presented in Bill 138, which is the implementation of the fall economic statement that we are continuing to look at. And lastly, for me, there is a Federation of Canadian Municipalities Advocacy Days later on this month. Councillor Dillon will be participating, and we're going to be working with him in his office to ensure that he's primed and ready to go with his meetings with MPs, and also we'll make sure that we circulate that back with this council, because we do recognize the importance of participating in these associations. So with that, I know that was really quickly, but again, I really wanted to hand this over to Pam and really talk about a really exciting initiative and participation for the City of Brampton.
Good morning, Mayor, Chair, members of the committee, and staff and the public. My name is Pam Cooper, Environmental Planner with the City of Brampton, and speaking to you on the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy. Councils play a significant role in realizing the benefits and opportunities of climate change action, and our council knows this. We've made a commitment to becoming a green city. On June 5th, 2019, Council declared a climate emergency and greenhouse gas emission target reduction of 80% by 2050. In partnership with Sheridan College, we're working on developing a community energy and emission reduction plan. And we're also working in partnership with Sheridan College and the Region of Peel to define and establish an Institute for Sustainable Brampton. On September 25th, Council directed staff to initiate the process to join the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy. The Global Covenant of Mayors is a first of its kind global alliance of cities leading the fight for climate change. There's more than 9,200 municipalities worldwide who are participating, including Boulder, Colorado, Zurich, Switzerland, Sydney, Australia. The Global Covenant of Mayors is a collaboration between the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, the Global Covenant of Mayors Secretariat, and it's supported by funding from the European Union. The initiative combines two leading domestic climate partners, the Partners for Climate Protection and Building Adaptive and Resilient Communities. This will result in further advancement of local climate action by adding value, opportunities, and streamlined support. The Global Covenant of Mayors supports ambitious and locally relevant solutions. The Global Covenant of Mayors has a Showcase Cities program. Brampton is among 25 municipalities across Canada who've been selected for an intensive Showcase Cities pilot program. Over the next year, we will receive support to reduce climate gas emissions. There are tailored workshops for staff on greenhouse gas inventories. There's one-on-one support for staff working through climate planning programs and assistance with reporting to the Global Covenant of Mayors. We also have access to networking opportunities and will be able to showcase municipal actions nationally and internationally. And this is free of cost for Canadian municipalities to join. We'll be joining cities such as Nanaimo, BC, Burlington, Oakville, Ottawa, and Laval, Quebec. The Global Covenant framework has three levels: commitment, mitigation, and adaptation. So, formal commitment to undertake the measures to reduce and avoid greenhouse gases, preparing for the impacts of climate change, and increasing access to sustainable energy is the first level. This is followed by mitigation, which is an inventory of greenhouse gas emissions, greenhouse gas emission targets, and planning for climate action change. And the third level is adaptation, an assessment of climate risk, setting climate change goals, and a climate change plan. Participating in the Global Covenant of Mayors recognizes our declaration of a climate emergency and supports our climate change initiatives that we're already involved in. We're asking that the mayor commit to the Global Covenant of Mayors by signing the declaration letter. So we will join thousands of other cities around the world that are engaged in climate leadership. The ceremonial signing of the declaration is going to take place later today, but we wanted to present this information to you and ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the exciting presentation and opportunity. Councillor Willens has a question.
Yeah, more of a thank you, Pam, very thorough as usual. As well, thank you for the community energy plan that we're going to be doing at Partisan Project Green. I don't have any questions on this. It's pretty good and pretty clear. I do have a question for Lowell, though, on the, where'd he go? There he is. Just quickly, on the report for the animal welfare, I noticed it in there, it says that there isn't any, there's nothing in there about the municipal enforcement, and it says it'll be done by the police, and that one there, police and provincial authorities. In the report, I haven't had a chance to read it thoroughly, but in the report, does it speak of how many provincial officers they're going to have? Because SPCA only had like one for this whole region. So I don't know if it's going to get better or worse.
Through the chair, the answer is we don't know. There is usually a very good chance that it'll probably not be enough to address province-wide, but that is something that we are continuing to work, and I know Kathy Duncan is knee-deep into this. So any additional information that we can provide over the next, as the legislation makes its way, in particular to the enforcement and the amount of officers that are available to address this, we will definitely continue to update.
Are we still pushing for municipalities?
Sorry?
Are we still pushing for municipalities to do the enforcement?
Through the chair, I would have to get back to you on that particular piece.
I know there are some municipalities, and we talked to them, to the ministers down at AMO. They said that we'll find a system that works as municipalities are doing it, but obviously they didn't look at some municipalities because they would have brought that forward in the report.
Yeah, through the chair, I know my conversations with Kathy, in terms of the enforcement piece, what's really important is to ensure that there is enforcement and to ensure that the resources are there. How that gets done, there can be that flexibility because obviously there's always a cost. But as this kind of gets rolled out, we'll definitely provide.
Because I think leaving it to the police is just putting another burden on the police. I mean, in some rural areas, the OPP could do it, but in farming communities, but in municipalities, I mean, large municipalities, I mean, that's just, it's not going to happen. Anyway, okay, thanks. I'll wait for the final report.
Thank you, Mayor Brown.
I just wanted to say thank you to Councillor Willens for his initial research on the global covenant of mayors committed to fighting climate change. I think this has been a real passion for Councillor Willens, and I think we're going to have, Lowell, for correct, a signing at lunchtime. And so I look forward to adding my name to that list. I just wanted to say I think it's beautiful that we live in a city where there's no debate on the importance of climate change. You see in some councils there's a discussion on climate change, and there's some people that are still skeptics. I think it speaks to the progressiveness of this council, the fact that everyone's on the same page, that we want to be a green city, and we're proud to do so. So thank you again, Councillor Willens, for doing this. And what time will that be at, if anyone wants to see?
Yeah, through the chair. So what's going to happen is during the break, we're going to ask the mayor to come back to the chambers to do a little photo op. So during the break, so whenever the council breaks during the lunch.
Okay, I think it makes sense to have all of council there for that.
That through the chair, that is our understanding and expectation.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. I just wanted to add, there are no more speakers on the board, but I wanted to add and say thank you to Michael Hoy, Pam, and all others who helped us get to this point with respect to the progress on climate change and addressing it here at the city. Obviously, Councillor Willens as well for bringing the Global Covenant forward, and I'm looking forward to watching the mayor sign that covenant. It's just another example of how the city of Brampton is taking the lead on climate change, transforming from a suburban community into one that is sustainable. And certainly last week, and we're going to hear from the delegate soon, David Suzuki had a lot to say about Brampton taking that lead as well. So thank you very much, and looking forward to the break when we sign that covenant. Can I get a motion to receive the presentation from Councillor Willens? All those in favor? Thank you. That motion is carried. The next item on the agenda is item 6.3, a delegation from the David Suzuki Foundation, Malkit Sandhu, for a debrief on the event that happened last week.
Hi everyone. I'm going to be doing a very millennial thing and using my laptop because we don't know what printers are anymore. Okay. Well, I want to start off by saying good morning to Mayor Brown and the rest of City Council, and I also want to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to speak with you this morning. And I also want to congratulate you, Mayor Brown, but also the rest of City Council for joining the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy. This is a really exciting step forward, and I'm sure really great things will come out of it. And I'm excited to see what you learn from the rest of the cities across Canada that are working on this issue as well. So I'm going to try to keep this as brief as I can. My name is Mulkeet Sandhu, and I'm a community organizer with the David Suzuki Foundation, but I'm also a proud Bramptonian who's grown up in the city for the past 12 years. I'm here today to speak with you about 3 things. First off, I wanted to share some highlights with you all from a recent Climate Talk event that we hosted in the city of Brampton, and that's a picture up there from that evening. I also want to share with you what we've been hearing from Bramptonians is their #1 challenge living and working in the city. And lastly, I want to congratulate this council for the amazing progress that you've made with just 1 year in office and talk about how we can build on this progress even further. So first off, on last Monday, November 4th, we had a really, really exciting event that I had the opportunity to help organize. So we had a discussion around climate action right here in Brampton in City Hall, as you can see up there. And many of you city councillors were there, and thank you so much for taking out time to be there and joining us that evening. The reason why I chose to organize this event in Brampton is because Brampton is very, very close to my heart, and I want to help our city become celebrated as one of the most sustainable, forward-thinking, and livable cities in the country, which I know you all also want to do. So at this event on Monday evening, we had obviously David Suzuki, but aside from that, we had more than 300 people from Brampton come out to take part in this vital conversation about climate action. These 300 plus Bramptonians were made up of youth, seniors, young professionals, adults, and families of all ethnicities. We are joined by Brampton's business owners, Brampton's working class families, and professionals from finance, tech, and also nonprofits. We are joined by local community groups, including seniors groups, youth groups, religious groups, and groups whose mandate goes beyond just climate, including folks that work around public health and social equity. Bramptonians came out on Monday night because they understand that the climate crisis impacts us all, and it impacts all aspects of our lives, no matter who we are and what we do. So here are some pictures. I don't really know how to work this thing. Okay, there you go. So yeah, this is just the crowd. And these are some of the pictures of some of the communities that came out to engage. And you can see, obviously, we have all ages that came out and communities from all backgrounds that came out as well. So what were the key takeaways from Monday night's event? So we had the opportunity to talk closely with a lot of Brampton's residents and community groups before the event, during the event, and after the event. And what we learned from Bramptonians is that they are worried about the climate crisis. It is a problem that they see that impacts them, but they are still hopeful for solutions as well. They don't see it as a bleak situation where we can't do anything. And they do want to see their city council continue to take leadership on climate action. They recognize the work that city council has done to date, but they want city council to build on that even more. So throughout our conversations with Bramptonians, one issue kept coming up time and time again, and that was transportation in our city. The #1 issue that Bramptonians identified, not just in terms of climate change, but their overall well-being, is their inability to easily get around in Brampton. Bramptonians, myself included, want to see City Council make an increased investment in public transit and active transportation. When we asked the people of Brampton why this issue was their #1 demand, they had to say this about public transit and active transportation. First off, it is one of the most effective ways to tackle the climate crisis, especially in suburban cities like ours. Secondly, it's also one of the most effective ways to bust congestion. Bramptonians are super frustrated with the long commute times in our cities, but they believe that the solution to this challenge is putting in more buses, more light rail, and more bike lanes, because every person who gets on a bus, train, or a bike is one less person that's sitting in a car. They also believe that public transit and active transportation improves the health of our communities. It gets people to be outdoors more. It gets people to exercise more. Obviously, there's less pollution in our city because of it as well, but there's also less time that you're spending stressed out in a car. Bramptonians believe that public transit and active transportation benefits everyone in Brampton. It gives everyone more freedom, more mobility, but also increases affordability. It especially supports our families, our seniors, and our students. And it also helps keep the economy moving, which I think a lot of people don't often think about that element of transit. It makes businesses more accessible to consumers, but also more accessible to employees. So I could go on about these benefits for a long time, but I know that I don't need to because I know that everyone here on council already knows this. It's clear from the actions that council has already started to take that this is a priority of yours and this is something that you really care about. As a Bramptonian, I'm incredibly proud of this council. From the conversations I've been having with our community, I know that the rest of Brampton is too. In just 1 year, you have made incredible progress. Bramptonians, thank you for approving the LRT plan, declaring a climate emergency, joining the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy, and pausing the expensive Williams Parkway expansion. All these steps are integral to making Brampton more sustainable, but also improving the quality of life of our communities and strengthening our economy. Brampton applauds you and encourages you to stick with this path forward. We urge you to continue to support local families and communities by continuing to invest in improved public transit and active transportation. Thank you so much for hearing me out, and this event was just one of many that we plan to host in Brampton over the next couple of years, and the David Suzuki Foundation is very happy to be here in Brampton and to work with you, hopefully for a long time, on making our city the most sustainable, green, and forward-thinking in the country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Malkeet, for the presentation and the debrief. It was a fantastic event last Monday. We have some questions from Councillor, and Councillor Williams is first.
Forgot about that part.
Thank you very much, through you, Chair. More of a thank you very much, Malkeet, for coming, and thank you for the email last week that you sent to us regarding the spotlight on November 14th on the webinar they're putting on through the
Yes.
Climate Caucus, I think it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe I went to the Climate Caucus and I actually joined.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I wanted just to let council know the Climate Caucus is it's a nonpartisan network of elected officials across the elected leaders across the country, and it's what's important is that they support FCM's policy recommendations, and it's from BC all the way to Halifax.
Yep.
And there's over, I think now there's
200. Yeah.
Wow, there's 201 now.
Oh, wow. Yay, Brampton's on there.
So, but thank you very much for forwarding this to us. It's great because it gives us a lot of other avenues that we can go down, support with other provinces and other cities across what they're doing for climate action. So thank you again, and it was a great, I wish that we were able to stay for the rest of the David Suzuki event, but from when we were there, it was great. It was a lot of fun, and thanks for the opportunity for allowing Councillor Santos and I for speaking at that event. So
Of course.
it was great.
Thank you both for coming out. And Mayor Brown, hopefully next time you'll be able to join us as well. I know you're in Portugal, but like I said, many more to come, so.
Maybe you could just give a brief description of what the Climate Caucus is, just quickly.
Yeah, so Councillor Willens obviously did a really great job of describing it, but the Climate Caucus is essentially like Councillor Willens said, it's a nonpartisan group of now 201 city councillors across Canada from all provinces from BC to Halifax, and essentially they are working together to basically figure out, okay, what can municipalities do in the face of climate change? So we have all these cities that are declaring climate emergencies, but they're trying to figure out what comes next, what happens once that emergency is declared, and how do we hit those targets? And so they're working together by kind of cross sharing their knowledge and their experiences, lessons that they've learned, mistakes that they've made, but they're also working together to lobby the federal government on certain actions that they need from the federal government in order to be able to carry out the climate action that they need to do on the ground in their own cities. So that kind of sums it up. I do encourage all of you to join. I did send a link to it, all of you as well, but I think if we have Councillor Willens on there, I'm sure he'll do a great job of representing everybody there as well.
Thank you, Malkeet. And I'll just add to that at FCM, when we were all there, both Councillor Vicente and I attended the Climate Caucus at FCM, and it was one of the only workshops and meetings that was over capacity. And Councillor Vicente, I'm sure, would remember, it was packed with people, the Climate Caucus, and it was overflowing to the hallway. People were listening in from the hallway, and they needed more room. So certainly it's an honor for now 3 of us to be on that Climate Caucus, but it's a fantastic network of people. Councillor Paleshi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for coming and doing this debrief, and we really appreciate it, and we do wish that we, at least I, and I know other members of council, wish that we had been able to stay and listen. I did get a chance to talk to Mr. Suzuki, and I briefed him a little bit about our environmental education center that hopefully we'll be bringing to Brampton very soon in the West End. So I would love the opportunity to reach out to yourself and have you guys and listen in and maybe talk and provide your input to CBC, the City of Brampton, the Region Appeal, on what that should look like going forward. During your delegation here, you had mentioned that you appreciated our pause on Williams Parkway. Can you expand on that a little bit as to why you appreciate that?
Well, I appreciate it, obviously, as a Bramptonian who lives here in the city, but also from the conversations, like I said, I've been having with folks in Brampton. The people of Brampton want to see the city invest its dollars in public transit and in active transportation. They don't feel that expanding a highway is going to solve the problem of congestion, because long-term, short-term, sure, it might seem like, okay, we have more space for cars, but long-term, that just motivates people to continue driving, to continue sitting in cars, which long-term is going to just add to the problem of congestion. And obviously that also adds to the problem of the climate crisis as well. If we're just creating more space for cars, we're not really creating more space for people to get on bikes, to get on light rail, to get on buses. And if you want to tackle the climate crisis, but also improve the quality of life for Bramptonians, improve their freedom, improve their mobility, and strengthen our economy, then we have to start shifting the way we plan our cities and the way that we move folks in our city.
And I agree with you 100%. But us moving forward had nothing to do with bike lanes and bus lanes, because that was actually in part of the construction. This process has been going on for a long, long time, and it was good to actually take a step back and pause, since I think 2007 it had started. So the public consultation was not only what I just had recently found out, was not only old and maybe expired, but there's always an opportunity to put a hold on something and look into it and maybe try and rejig it a little bit to benefit the future of the city. Has there ever been an opportunity for your organization to provide comments on what Williams Parkway should look like, and maybe other roads during their expansions?
Do you mean, has there been an opportunity in the past, or could there be an opportunity? Or?
Is there an opportunity, or have you had an opportunity to provide your consultation through that process?
So I have not had the opportunity to do that yet, but this is something that our organization is happy to get involved in, and we're happy to get our community in Brampton involved in it too. Like, we're happy to get the folks that came out that day to be part of the conversation, and we have, I think, a couple thousand people that subscribe to our organization within Brampton itself, and I'm sure that they would love to be part of the conversation and part of that decision making as well. And we would love to help activate them and get them to be part of that conversation.
That's excellent. So a lot of community groups and organizations in our area depend on the area councillors to provide them with the information to let them know that consultation is coming through. Unfortunately, it's a long and tedious process sometimes, but when you have organizations such as yourselves, with the backing that you guys have you guys been paying attention to agendas that have been made public by the City of Brampton to see where your interests lie and to see where you can provide comments?
We have been. I'm doing it more so now because I only started in this role in April, and this organization only started looking at Brampton when I came on, and I'm pushing them to look at Brampton because, like I said, I'm from here and it's close to my heart, and so that will be a part of my work. Yes, working with the city to look at specific pieces that we can work on to hit our climate targets.
Wonderful. So I think the gist of it is we'll see you more around these council chambers.
Yes, you will.
Excellent. Thank you so much for coming.
I hope that's a good thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you. There are no speakers on the board. Just a question to staff. I believe that there is workshops, etc., being planned to look at the Williams Parkway pause. and just wondering timing-wise, if you could share with us what that time frame would look like. And thank you very much, Malkeet, for explaining what induced demand is about.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of council. Yes, so we can confirm that we are going to be doing a workshop to which the public is invited to look at Williams Parkway. We do always have public consultation on all of our road projects, so we're happy to get any sort of input we can so we can apply. We are looking at our roads differently. We are including facilities for public transportation, public transit, active transportation. We have our partners that we work with, but as always, we're happy to get any input that we can to make our roads better. So that will probably be happening probably Q2 of 2020, but we'll make sure that that notice goes out so everybody can come and give us some input.
That's great. Thank you so much. May I have a motion to receive the delegation? Councillor Paleshi, all those in favor? That is carried. Our next item is 6.1, possible delegations from the public regarding a surplus declaration of easement rights over city lands for sanitary sewer infrastructure in order to facilitate the development of the lands located at the northeast corner of Countryside Drive and Heart Lake Road by 225600 Investments Limited, Ward 9. This item relates to staff report, item 10.2.1 on today's public agenda. Does anyone here today wish to come forward and speak on this matter? No. Let the record show no one is here today to delegate on this item. We will deal with the staff report, item 10.2.1, in its normal sequence on the meeting agenda. The next item on the agenda, Councillor Paleshi, apologies.
That's okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to recognize that that's in Ward 2, not Ward 9.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ward 2 it is. Okay. Next item on the agenda is delegation item 6.2, a delegation from Mohammed Bamani, engagement partner, and David Bryden, project manager, EY Advisory Services, regarding winter maintenance service review, and your timing is perfect. This item relates to staff report item 6.2.3 on today's public agenda. Welcome, Mohammed and David. You have 5 minutes for your delegation.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Mayor, councillors. As we said, my name is Mohammed Bamani. I'm an associate partner with Ernst & Young in our government public sector practice. I am leading EY's component of the service reviews that are currently taking place. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about winter maintenance, and as you said, Chair, it's very timely around that as well. Really, our purpose here today, what you've been provided in your councillor package for today, is a relatively detailed report that has quite a bit of information around some of the jurisdictional analysis and some of the scope that we are doing. I'm not going to go through every single page in this. I'm going to draw you to a few highlights that have inputted into the staff report that you're going to receive related to, or that you have received related to winter maintenance. So really, the purpose of this project, it is a preliminary report as part of our review of public works and engineering for the broader service reviews that are being conducted. In this one, really we've been able to do some analysis around alternative service delivery for winter maintenance, looking at service levels and different scope of services, looking at some interjurisdictional analysis around alternative removal and mitigation methods, and an analysis of comparable jurisdictions. There are other components that are still being completed, and they will be fully reported on to Budget Committee towards December 20th, which is when our final deadline is. So I'm just going to go through a few of these. There's a slide here that talks a little bit about our data and modeling assumptions. Just, quite a bit of detail. Just moving on through our executive summary, I'm on page 9.2.3-14. Really, what was the scope of our winter maintenance review that was completed? Winter maintenance services, it includes a snow removal and salting for more than 3,900 kilometers of roads, over 900 kilometers of sidewalks, over 2,400 transit stops, and 81 city parking lots, in addition to school crossings, recreational trails, bus terminals. These services are delivered through a mix of in-house and contracted resources, with contractors being responsible for maintaining approximately 90% of those routes. Winter maintenance staff also does all the winter planning during the non-winter months, which has immediately ended in the last couple of days. And the winter maintenance budget, operating budget for 2018-19 is $21 million. That is per the FIR data that is provided to the province. 12 million of that goes to contracted services. There is a slide in here that talks about the scope of our overall review, and we've gone through that before, and I'll let you look at that at another time, and as we go forward into finalizing the report in December. Really, some of the things that are applicable for the staff report that you were going to look at is that we were asked to look at 4 specific scenarios. One is around evaluating service delivery models, which considers bringing additional maintenance routes in-house as opposed to continuing with the contracted out model. It was about evaluating the impact of increasing service levels for local roads from 7.5 to 5 centimeters, to evaluate the impact of increasing the time taken to clear sidewalks, and to evaluate the impact of increasing the percentage of sidewalks cleared. So there is a significant amount of detailed analysis that has been done and continues to happen. We have fed that into the winter maintenance team, and that is reflected in the staff report that they'll be discussing later on during this council meeting. Just a brief overview of some of the jurisdictional scan that we actually did. We looked at the city of Vaughan, city of Mississauga, Markham, Hamilton, Burlington. Really, we chose these because of the similar size, proximity to Brampton and so on. Some of the areas that we looked at specifically when we were trying to find out information about how winter maintenance is done in those other cities revolved around looking at service delivery models, service levels, what the organization structure and staffing looks like, what winter maintenance coverage is, and what the public engagement reporting and education that actually happens in those areas to see what we could learn from them. I'm going to briefly just draw your attention to a few of the findings here before we move on. Really, what we found when it comes to service delivery models is that all jurisdictions essentially employ a mix of in-house and contracted services. In Brampton, it's 90-10, and that's about the same as most other municipalities. Many jurisdictions have sought to implement increased service levels during the life of a contract, but have found that contractors struggle to economically procure additional equipment if there are 2 or fewer years remaining in that contract. And that actually moves on into the next one around service levels, is that as you try and increase your service levels, you would tend to have the same challenges. It's about procuring equipment. It's about ensuring that you are growing the capacity. So increasing service levels has the risk of trying to, and the cost of trying to procure all those capital costs, all that capital equipment, whether it's in-house or it's contractors at writ large. And one interesting that we found there was that service level increases do not necessarily result in the reductions of complaints from residents. Vaughan, in fact, as an example, decided to get into the windrow clearing business, and their complaints actually doubled. So the greater level of service and the more services that you provide will invite, consequently, more scrutiny and more questions and more complaints as you go forward. In terms of our winter maintenance coverage findings, really jurisdictions are evaluating non-salt alternatives, and have found broadly there is no consensus as to what the best way to do it is. They've used other alternatives, but there's greater volumes that need to be considered. So there's no consensus yet as to what the best method is aside from salting. And really, all jurisdictions struggle with effectively communicating winter maintenance levels to the public, and complaints are often related to misaligned expectations. Is that the public generally just wants snow clear. They don't really understand the components of that, what service levels are, and the impact on that, and how that drives what actually happens. And all jurisdictions struggle to communicate that. The rest of your package is really quite a bit of detailed information here that leads into some of these findings. I'll not bore us with all of that. I'll just say that the next piece for us will be to come back to you in December with the completed report. And as I said, many of these findings have fed into the staff report that'll come forward. And so I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. I do have a question from Councillor Bowman.
Thank you very much. Are we bringing the report forward now as well for questions?
Is that the will of the committee? Yes? Yep, we will be bringing the report forward as well.
Okay. Something you said on your very first slide, I think, was that the city, I forget the exact wording, but the city of Brampton provides a higher than average service level?
I think it's no. I think it's relatively common. I might look to my colleague David to just confirm that.
I think it was on your very first slide, one of the points there.
I think we were about the same in terms of the contractor in-house split, for sure. But David, I'll let you.
Yeah, so I would say that service levels vary a fair amount across jurisdictions. In some cases, Brampton does provide higher service levels. In other cases, Brampton does not. So it depends. In some cases, for example, jurisdictions don't clear transit stops. That's done differently. It's done by transit organizations. The city does transit stops. Snow clearing for sidewalks is done at different levels and at different times. There's quite a lot of variability, I would say, overall. Brampton's service levels are consistent with other municipalities.
Okay, because there's always, and we've seen it just in the last 2 or 3 days, there's always the perception, I guess, by some residents that Brampton doesn't do enough in the snow clearing area. Personally, I think Brampton does a wonderful job, especially just in this past snow event, getting things done. Sometimes we don't meet the expectations of our residents, whether it's 24 hours, 48 hours, whether it's the height of a hockey puck. How did you come up with your levels of service as to whether we meet them or as to whether we exceed them? Was it based on the number of complaints we get? Was it based on the reports that we get from our staff who are out there? Because all the trucks that we have, I think, are monitored, correct? We know exactly where they are. We know exactly what they're doing. Yes. So how did your level of service get decided?
Through the chair, yes, you're absolutely right. Not only are our vehicles monitored, but also all our contracted vehicles are monitored. And that data was used by the consultant to inform some of the findings in the report.
Okay.
I would also say we looked at reports not only from Brampton, but publicly available reports from the 5 jurisdictions that we reviewed. We reviewed the publicly available service levels, so what they stipulate, what the cities stipulate their service levels to be, and any reporting around the extent to which they did or did not meet those service levels.
Okay, and if they did or did not meet service levels, was that based on the number of complaints we get from residents? Was that taken into account?
Complaints was one factor, yes. There
Okay.
were other factors, including what extenuating circumstances may have prevented them. So, if you had a really significant storm, that can affect the ability to meet service levels. But that would be consistent for many of the jurisdictions that we reviewed.
Okay, and the final report, including all cost implications of switching over to alternatives, bringing more stuff in-house rather than contracting it out, that'll be presented to us prior to budget in December?
Through the chair, yes, that's part of Ernst & Young's overall requirement is to bring that forward.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Paleshi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's too bad that a lot of times that we go through this process, it's determined that we're comparing apples to walnuts. And that's kind of what I'm sitting here and looking at and trying to, figure out. I love hearing that, we do a great level of service in something, but what I really want to hear is where we're lacking and what needs attention. And I guess I'm not really getting that from you here today or within the report. We had a discussion about the changes. We've been having this discussion for probably almost 4 or 5 years now. So I guess, it's a good time to have this here as well. Usually we have this discussion in the spring or in the summer where it's nice and hot out and we kind of just move it off to the side and not worry about it. And I'm glad that, one of the other reports on here is about about grass cutting and stuff. But this here today, the recommendations, and we had the discussion about trying to get vehicles off of the road when we're sending plows out to do those roads, and those are one of the biggest inhibitors of trying to get our plows through to get rid of all of the snow before that snow then gets tracked onto the main roads, and then we have to go back and repeat and re-clean, and then the phone calls come in. The tracking service, bylaws power, enforcement's power. What changes need to be done in that capacity to essentially get the service that we're never going to have, where the phone calls stop, the complaints stop coming in, but where do we get the better level of service through technology and powers of enforcement?
Through the chair, that's a multifaceted, there's a multifaceted answer to that question. First off, if you look on page of the report, the staff report 9.2.3-6, there is a new commitment this year from our parking enforcement group to be far more proactive in those areas. We have data from previous years that feeds into parking enforcement to allow them to focus on certain areas that we've had problems in the past. The other piece too is there's also an initiative from communications and an awareness perspectives to also provide some upfront information to some of those neighborhoods, letting them know that parking on street during a winter event is in fact an infraction and that it shouldn't be done. Mm-hmm. So there's other things in the communication piece that are also going to help inform that. But again, the biggest one is having that commitment from parking enforcement to actually target some of those areas.
So, and I don't know if, I'd love to say that a stick is going to help us in the process of having enforcement go out and they're throwing tickets around. And to me, I know that on this side of it, we know that is a huge cost for the city of Brampton to be out there ticketing vehicles and then fighting those tickets if we have to fight the tickets in court. And I'm not sure, although I would love to see kind of that the tow trucks be there prior to, but before we get to that point, I noticed yesterday, or when the snowfall happened, Caledon sent out this mass communication. All roads in Caledon are you're no longer allowed to park on the roads in Caledon during that snow event. Do we have anything like that? I know that I know that the communication, we talked about that in our meeting, and the communication that you've put together is great. But do we have anything like that in terms of where Caledon had actually reached out to say all roads in Caledon you are prohibited from being parked on?
Through the chair, I'm not sure exactly what that looked like in Caledon, but we do have initiatives related to our website that speak to those items. If people were to call into 311 as an example, they would be guided to the website. We do have the new vehicle tracking public portal, the plow tracker that goes live at the end of this week. So there's other items or other ways that we can do that. I'd be interested to see what Caledon is doing. So what I can commit to is that we can reach out, our communications staff and our group can reach out to Caledon and find out exactly what they're doing. And then if it's something that we can do here, we will.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any questions of the delegation. Oh, Councillor Vincente's on. I do have, I'd ask for communications to come up if possible and just kind of give a brief of where you see this, what you look forward into to what we're doing here, our approach to the communication. Is that possible?
Good morning. So we have a comprehensive communications plan in place, which we've given you a little bit of an overview of so far. And as Mike has alluded to, we try to use a variety of tactics. So we do a brochure mail out to areas in Brampton that are new within the past 2 years, where we've seen often that's where we have a little more trouble with people parking on the street. This year, we're also targeting using the data from last year, we're targeting some of the areas that were particular issues, and doing some more targeted communications to them, both in print and doing some geo-targeted social media advertising. And as Mike alluded to, I'm going to take a look at what Caledon has done. We do really ramp up the parking on the street is a big message for us, and we do really try to ramp that up when we're going into a storm with messaging at our on the TVs at our rec centers, on our front and center on our website, through the messages that have been sent to council as part of the toolkit that you'll be getting again soon. So if there are any other, we're always open to more ideas for reaching as many people as we can. And we're really focusing this year, as we've talked about a little bit, on really ramping up our ethnic media outreach as well. So
okay, good. I guess my final comment through you, Madam Chair, would be that kind of related and unrelated, but it seems that since you know the areas of that we want to be targeting, and we know some of the problem areas, does communications provide that information by way of a reporter or other to planning for future developments and what we can learn from these issues?
We can certainly look at doing that. I would ask Public Works. They're kind of the holders of that data. We get that from them. So,
okay.
Yeah, so we can, if that's not already happening, we can certainly look at.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Vicente, do you have questions for the delegation? If not, I will ask a motion to be moved to receive the delegation.
I just want to thank you for it's important. And I want to thank staff for engaging with us and going through the workshops with us, because this is one of those issues that comes around every year and it is important to residents. I'd be happy to move receipt of the delegation. Thank you for coming. And I'd be happy to also move the report and the recommendations, which includes the proactive bylaw enforcement of selected areas in the city.
Fantastic.
Thank
So a
you.
motion to receive the delegation and the recommendations of the report. All those in favor? That motion is carried. I thought that would be a longer discussion. I believe the next item on the agenda is under the Economic Development and Culture section. There is only one item on the agenda, which is item 7.3.2, a verbal update from Mayor Brown regarding the Investment Mission to Lisbon, Portugal Web Summit, November 4th to 7th, 2019. Mayor Brown, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And first of all, let me thank Councillor Marta Medeiros and Councillor Paul Vicente, who took a leadership role on this economic development effort. The fact that they're bilingual in Lisbon was a major asset, and I appreciate their commitment to work long hours those days. I first heard about the Web Summit from Mayor John Tory and Mayor Frank Scarpetti, who were at the Web Summit last year. I think we're blown away by the scope of this conference, 70,000 international attendees. It's the who's who of the tech world. And what's really interesting is the folks that organize the Web Summit, which is the largest tech conference in the world, also organize Collision, which happens now in Toronto. And so many of these venture funds, many of these emerging tech companies that go to Web Summit also go to Collision. So this was a great opportunity for us not only to pitch Brampton, but actually take advantage of the synergy between these two conferences and say, while you're planning your trip to Collision, can we get you to come out a day early or stay a day later and come and visit Brampton and see what we have going on? And so there seemed to be a lot of interest for that additional time in their schedule for Collision. I want to thank Devin and Claire for their hard work. Obviously, we're trying to market Brampton as a great environment for a tech ecosystem, and we had the help there of the Canadian ambassador, who was grateful that we were there to make a pitch for Brampton, but inadvertently we're making a pitch for Canada as well. Jumping ahead to the next slide, we also saw one of the ways that Lisbon was able to transform their city into one of the major tech hubs in the world. They've done some really exciting stuff that we could learn from. I always say there's no monopoly on a good idea. I think some of the initiatives they undertook could be things that we could examine here. Paddy Cosgrove, we had an opportunity to build a relationship with. He is the CEO of the Web Summit in Collision, and he's sort of the biggest mover and shaker in the world when it comes to tech startups. And so the fact that we've got Brampton on his radar, I think, is great. And we certainly made him aware of our interest to be part of Collision next year and having organized tours around Collision. And so his team seemed to be keen on that. We started that this year with 1 day of tours, but I think there's an opportunity to grow that much more significantly. And Sunil Sharma, who's from Peel Region, who runs Techstars, it was great to connect with him too, and he thinks there's an incredible opportunity for Brampton as well. And here's a guy who's created tech jobs. We did corporate call after corporate call after corporate call. And all in all, I thought it was a very fruitful opportunity to highlight one of the sectors that is growing in Brampton. And I would say we have the list of all the venture investors that were there. Claire, how big is that list we have now? A few thousand. So we got a few thousand contacts that we're now working with to try to drive attention to the opportunity to locate in Brampton. As I always said, the advice we got from the great Hazel McCallion was that if you don't go and make the pitch, there's no way you're going to land that investment. And if we take all those shots, some of them are actually going to land. And so our list of targets is now much more significant. And so I certainly felt it was good value to take the time and make those pitches for those 4 days at the Web Summit. I'm not sure if Councillor Medeiros or Vicente want to add anything, but I think once you participate in one of Claire's FDI projects, you really appreciate the value that FDI has. That's the one thing that I would close with.
Thank you, Mayor Brown, and we were certainly following you and your progress on social media. You looked very busy, and indeed, both Councillor Medeiros and Vicente have a few words.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you, Mayor. I think you've highlighted a lot of what I wanted to, I guess, capture or what certainly entailed the mission. Just a couple of highlights, I guess, for members of council. First was the education piece around, how important work that goes into something, it was my first time. I was here, Councillor Pleshy was aware of it, and he was also educated to the fact of the staff time that goes into this, the planning, the amount of investment when it comes to and organizational sort of capacity that is that is contributed to this type of mission. Hats off to staff, hats off to our director. It was just fabulous to see, not only the support they provided us, but the amount of detail, the amount of contacts, the amount of, meetings, for example, at the Canadian Embassy, where, the Canadian Embassy will probably meet with delegations, businesses all across the world, and the fact that, we're pushing Brampton to keep top of mind, so when there's opportunities that they can sort of work with our staff, that is so invaluable to be, there in comparison to other jurisdictions. So that was, another learning. And I think just lastly, just kudos to our mayor. I tell you, if there's someone who hustles and someone who really promotes Brampton more than him, I don't know. Honestly, it's just, he really is a force of energy, and certainly Councillor Vicente and myself really learned and saw the way that he was really promoting Brampton, and it's helped educate myself in terms of how I go out there and promote Brampton. So just overall, great work, but it certainly does tell us we're on the right path, and good luck to my colleagues who are going out there and promoting Brampton. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maderos. Councillor Vicente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to echo the sentiments of Councillor Maderos as well. The mayor was indeed a great champion for our city and sold the city very well. Not to add, not to repeat what has already been said, but to give us a new point of view. I was born here in Canada, but I had the opportunity to live in Portugal between the ages of 7 and 10. And I lived in Lisbon. And when I lived there in the mid-'80s, it was not that interesting of a place. Certainly culturally, it was brimming. But in terms of its economic ability and its importance as part of Europe, wasn't that significant back then. To see what has happened in the country over the past 25, 30 years, due to their insistence on the importance of education, on the importance of skills development, on the value of federal, so state investment into skills development and training, and empowering their youth to become business leaders of the future. That has paid off in spades today. Lisbon is now a hub of economic activity and tech development. And I see significant parallels between what has happened in Lisbon and where we are at today, here in the city of Brampton, with the amount of youth that are here who are well-trained and who are really poised to take Brampton forward and to make Brampton a significant place for economic activity. So I think that we need to continue to develop our youth and to help them to develop their skills. The role of the state and the municipality in particular in the city of Lisbon is remarkable. When we visited the hub, the creative hub that they are currently building in downtown Lisbon, that place when I lived there was just a ruin. And what they're doing with the way in which they are adapting that waterfront, and in particular this underutilized asset in the city, with the cooperation of the state of Portugal and with the hard work certainly of the city of Lisbon, it just shows how important it is for government to work together and to collaborate and to stimulate economic activity. And so I think that that speaks loudly to us here, that we're on the right track, that what we're doing is important, and if we don't do it, we will be left behind. And so it's really essential that we take on this role and to do to the best of our ability and support staff. And thanks again to Claire and to Devin for really walking us through this process and to being our guides. Because, Web Summit is now going to be happening in the city of Lisbon until 2028. How the city of Lisbon was able to do that speaks volumes to the work that they did over the past 25, 30 years. And so I say to us, let's also roll up our sleeves and do the same. Thank you.
Well said. Thank you, Councillor Vicente. It sounds like these opportunities are not just about FDI and networking, but also about best practices on how to do and attract business investment here to Brampton as well. Thank you very much. The next item on the motion to receive the verbal update from Mayor Brown. Moved by Councillor Maderos. All those in favor? That motion is carried. No correspondence. 7.4, Councillor's question period. Do members of council have any questions regarding this section of the agenda? Seeing none. Public question period. Item number 7.6. Do any members of the public have any questions regarding the economic development section of the agenda? Seeing none. Before we move to the next section, I just wanted to acknowledge some of the young people we have here in the chamber today who are very excited to watch Committee of Council. They are co-op students working with Jane in the Public Works Department. Jane, did you want to share some information about the students who are joining us today?
Tell them I wouldn't embarrass them, but that's how it goes, right?
I'm sharing.
So, but yeah, we just wanted to introduce our co-op students. As you know, we employ about 20 co-op students in the summer and the fall term under the guidance and leadership of our managers and supervisors, Mike Donnelly, Sunil Sharma, Chris Wooten, and Derek Curry, who's here today. We've really revamped our student program so that we give them a really great experiential learning experience. So it's not just about going out on our jobs and monitoring some of the great work that we do out there with our resurfacing, with our capital projects and our asset management program, but also making sure that they really get a fulsome experience here at the city. So they get to do some mentoring with some of our staff. Our staff are really great at interacting with our students, making sure that we partner up with our other divisions at Public Works so that they really get some idea about what a career could look like here at the city in Public Works. And then also coming here to make sure that they understand that the work that they do out on site, they have a line of sight to how business is done here at the city. So it's always a thrill to come here. And I tell them I could sit here all day. I'm fascinated by council and all the different subjects that we tackle and the things that we have to resolve for our residents. So thank you for acknowledging them. So that's our students. Wave.
Stand up, wave, hello.
So, yeah,
Thank you very much
thanks
for being here. I just wanted to acknowledge that because as Councillor Vicente mentioned in Lisbon, they really supported their young people, skills development and training. And as co-op students here at the City of Brampton, you are in good hands. And I hope that you will rate the performance of each councillor today on the Committee of Council. The next section of the agenda is corporate services. There are no staff presentations under item 8.1, and we are now under reports. Item 8.2.1 is a staff report regarding provincial offences, court shortage of judicial resources, all wards. Do any members have questions or comments regarding this report? I see a few. Councillor Willens is first.
Yeah, thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Thank you, staff, for bringing this forward. Joe and your team. It's very important that we do actually follow through with this, because I understand there may be some JPs being hired in the near future. So it's very critical that we get there to let them know, let the province know that we are short. I think there's a shortfall already. I think there's supposed to be around 52. As you say in the report, there's 52, and there's only at 40 for this area. And there's 13 other regions looking for JPs. So I think it's important that we get, let the province know that we do have a shortage. It is tying up our courts, because also there's a lot expected to retire, and the amount of time to train them is it's over a year to get them trained and up so they can be JP. So that 40 could turn to 30 before there's more ready to just take to the stand. So it's great. I fully support this, and I'll just let Councillor Bowman talk.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bowman.
Thank you very much, through you, Madam Chair. Great report. Thank you for bringing this forward. One thing it does highlight is for the City of Brampton, in the past 2 years, we've put a huge effort, a multidisciplinary effort, into the crackdown on illegal and basement apartments. You can see by the numbers here, municipal bylaw offenses, 4,010 in 2018, and we're already at 5,200. And other provincial offenses, we finished 2018 at 10,200. We're already at 9,700. I don't know Joe, maybe you can answer. What effect is this going to have on the number of prosecutions that we're trying to bring forward now, based on the work that the task force is doing on illegal second units?
Through the chair, it'll have a significant impact simply because our team has already tried to juggle and manage the schedules and move some things around, in effect, to do as best we can with the resources we have, not just on our side, but even managing our courtrooms and the JPs that we have available to us, to get as many municipal days as possible to manage those files. given the increase in the number of charges being laid and the scope of work, there is going to be a greater impact on those resources and the sheer need for the JPs we're down and the ones we need additionally. The Superior Courtroom across the street is the busiest courtroom in the province. It's also a reflection of our POA court is a very busy courtroom because they're not just hearing the files in relation to multiple units. There are a number of other files flowing through there. So there's only so much that the system can handle. We have capacity within the facility. It's just we need JPs to help us move those files forward. And there is precedent with the Jordan decision, which has come forward saying if you cannot hear a case within X number of days, those cases, people have a right to due process, and if you can't meet that timeline, those cases are tossed. So we need to be cognizant of that. The judiciary is cognizant of that, as is MAG, but this is a great opportunity to get everyone around the table. We've been working extremely well at our level to do the best we can and come up with ideas. I think this is the time to escalate. There are other municipalities who've had to close their POA courthouses because of the lack of JPs. So I don't want to say it this way, but we're fortunate that we're still in business from that perspective. I don't want to get in that position.
Do we have any other options? Is there anything else available to us other than petitioning to get more JPs? Does this affect our AMPS program at all, or is that sort of bypassing that system?
Through the chair, it doesn't affect our AMPS process per se, but this is why we want to escalate this issue, is we need to come up with concrete options and alternatives beyond the traditional ones because we need to address the issue. And I'm confident that with all the key players at the table and the support of council, that we will have a constructive dialogue to come up with something that's going to work.
Okay, because I just look at this, I say Brampton's, we've got critical shortages in other areas, as we all know, health is one. This appears to me to be we're approaching a critical shortage here for the amount of things that this city is trying to do to try to keep everybody in this city safe. And I really think we've got to go that extra mile to do whatever we can to make sure that we get these people in place. I hate to see cases thrown out. I believe that everybody's entitled to due process. But I mean, we're working extra hard to make sure, especially with the illegal second units, that prosecutions continue. And this is like putting a huge roadblock in front of that. So I think anything that we can do to speed this up, let's do it. So thank you very much. Great report.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. Councillor Fortini.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Joe, for the report. Just a couple of questions. So I know we're going to be facing some problems here. The courts, like you said, after a certain time, they're going to throw a lot of stuff out, minor stuff. Is it the province or people not applying? Because there was over 5,200 applications put in for just a piece not too long ago.
So through the chair, it is a very, based on my experience at MAG, is a very complex and long process for the applications to be received. And they're in a lockdown room and only certain people have access, and they get thousands of applications for JPs. And then they go through all those different applications and there's a screening process. And as Councillor Willens had indicated, even once those people are selected, there is a significant time that is required for training and they don't like this terminology, but I'll call training and education to get them up to speed so that they can be put into various locations across the province. And then there is some challenges because the judiciary dictates where those positions go, not the ministry. The ministry just funds the positions. And there are some funding restraints at the province in terms of how many positions can be afforded, and the judiciaries decide where and how they allocate those funds.
Because most of those is for first attendance, try to solve the issue before you go to court. And if all these courts or cases get wiped out because they haven't been there like in 7 months or 8 months and it's been too long, really, we're all losing money. The money's there to pay for them. That's what I couldn't understand because it was over 5,200 applications submitted for just a piece. I know it's a long process. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Willens.
Yeah, just quickly, sorry, Joe, I didn't give you a chance to answer. Are they going through the process of looking for more JPs?
Through the chair, my understanding is that is correct.
Okay.
And Mayor Brown?
Yeah, they're always looking for more JPs. But it's it's inherently a political process as well, and so and it's also a cost containment. If you recall, Council, last year I wrote the federal justice minister and the provincial justice minister on the shortage we have with judges in the provincial and superior courts, causing cases to be thrown out. I'm sure you've heard the stories. This is not just a problem with provincial offences. We've had criminal trials thrown out because of that 2-year precedent, and so there are individuals that potentially are guilty of serious crimes that are getting off the hook because of the under-resources in the judicial system. So the fact we have this update here, I tried to pull at the federal and provincial justice ministers from the perspective of this is an abuse of the administration of justice when someone and people are not going to be accountable, not have that judicial process. But I think I suspect one of the reasons they're taking their time for these appointments is it's cost containment. It's expensive. And so I think we need to show to them what the cost of not making these appointments are. And so maybe when we do our advocacy, Joe, if you could look into this, that we could highlight what the cost to Brampton is and what the financial loss to the province is within our area. Because I'm sure if you look at the collection of some of these fines, if you look at the wasted time, we could probably put a dollar figure on that. And I think that might be more compelling with this government to show that it actually costs them more to delay. Would that be something that you could work on?
Through the chair to the mayor, notes have been made. That'll be part of the submission.
Great.
Thank you very much. There are no, Councillor Bowman would like to move receipt of the report and the recommendations. All those in favor? That motion is carried. The next item is 8.2.2, a staff report regarding the purchasing activity quarterly report, third quarter 2019. Do any members have questions or comments to staff on the report? Councillor Bowman.
Thank you very much, through you, Madam Chair. I just had some questions on some of the items that turn up in the reports. There's a number. It's no secret that I hate consultants. Not as such, but just the fact that we hire a lot of consultants here. There's nobody here that I'm offending, I hope. We hire a lot of consultants. And I've always looked at this as there are areas where maybe hiring consultants are warranted, but I think there's a lot of areas where the City of Brampton, we always say we look to hire the brightest and best professionals. And, there's some areas that I think we're spending money on consultants where we should be depending on some of the expertise we have on staff. And if we don't have that expertise to deep dive into some of these areas and perform basically internal audits, I think we're lacking somewhere. I think we're maybe lacking in finding people that have this ability to do that. Now again, I don't have an issue when we need a consultant in an area that we don't normally have at KPMG if they're doing a deep dive into somewhere, but we do have an audit committee. We do have an audit department. And if we don't have the right people there, we should be hiring people. If a consultant comes in and does a wonderful job for us, I would be looking at that, hiring that person to come and work for the City of Brampton and perform more audits, rather than continually hiring the company that they work for to do the audits. So there's a lot of audit on here, or not audit, I should say, but consultants. I don't want to get those two confused. And I think I asked Joe, I don't know if it was you, but for budgeting coming up in December, can we separate all the consultant fees out so that we have a number, whether it's $1 million, whether it's 10 million, so that we have a number that we know, here's what the city of Brampton pays for consultants in various areas every year? Is that possible?
Through the chair and speaking with our procurement team, it is something we can do and we will have ready.
Okay, thank you. The other one I had a question about was environmental assessment studies. We all know the EAs, we have to do them on everything we do, whenever we want to put a road anywhere, whenever we want to put a transit terminal anywhere. But I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, Bill 108 that reduced some of these demands for EAs. Is that going to have an impact on any of the costs for some of these EA studies that we've got listed here? Or are we still going through the entire EA process without shrinking the process as the province has said can be done? I don't know if anyone can answer that, so.
If I may, through you, Chair, so I think we'll have to get that answer back to you through email to all of council. I know we're looking at the implications of the bill on a broad basis, so your specific question, I've taken note, and we'll get an answer.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Brolman. Mayor Brown.
Thank you, Councillor Santos. First question is on the Q3 report number 68, the insurance. There's an insurance extension. Was that from the same company that wasn't tendered? Number 68.
Yes.
Yeah, you want to go to number 68?
Oh, there we go. I have my glasses on now. Thank you. Yes, good morning, Chair. What was your specific question, Mr. Mayor?
Well, a few months ago we were talking about the need to have competitive tendering in the insurance sector. There was some complaints in the community that it wasn't tendered out. I had been asking those questions. I'm just curious, does this relate to that same contract?
Yes, that is the extension. Would you like the background related to that specific?
Well, just given the sensitivity that there wasn't a public tender on that, I'm just curious why we would be extending that contract.
So through the chair, when we typically do RFP every 5 years. We've done that forever with the insurance program. It's a very large, comprehensive program, runs approximately just under $3 million a year. When we started putting the RFP together this year, we found that there were a lot of other elements at play. I can give you a little bit of that background. We found that there was a significant shrinkage within the municipal, specifically municipal insurance market. There were insurance companies that were actually walking away from municipalities. They didn't want to engage anymore. Part of the reasons around that is the number of claims that are coming against municipalities. The awards that are coming through the courts against municipalities are much more increased than they've ever been in the past. It was interesting when we had the winter maintenance contract report earlier. Some of the Ontario winter maintenance contractors can no longer get insurance for this particular season, not because of what they do, but because they do it for municipalities. So there were a lot of factors that we were looking at. When you look at the big brokerage firms, we only get 3 or 4 people actually big enough to solicit tenders to us when we do go out to RFP. One of those, which was the Ontario Municipal Insurance Reciprocal Exchange, is no longer writing business. They're in wind-up mode. They've walked away from the municipal sector altogether. Frank Cowan, who some of you may be familiar with, they've been in the business for many, many years. Most of their company has just been purchased by Intact Insurance, so we don't know what their book of business is going to look like. And the two biggest in Canada being Marsh Canada and JLT have just merged effective December the 1st. So there was a significant amount of shrinking. We also were hearing from other municipalities that were renewing July 1st. City of Hamilton got hit with 42% increase. That's massive. York Region was 22% increase. Mississauga is around the 19% increase. Brampton, we've been very, very fortunate. We have not seen any type of fluctuation with our premium dollars.
Well,
the other thing that was at play was the regional governance review. We didn't know what that was going to look like at the time. We thought it was a prudent business decision to extend with the current provider because we know that our current carrier is big enough to carry anything that could have been downloaded to us. That was the reason we brought a report to council back in July, the beginning of July, and that extension was approved. Now, we understand that the regional governance piece isn't at play anymore. If that hadn't have been at play, would we have extended for 3 years? Possibly only 2.
So I think at the time, council accepted the explanation that there wasn't competition in the industry. Since that point, we've had a number of those same insurance companies say that they were upset that there wasn't a public tendering process, that their submissions would have been significantly less than what was awarded. And so there is a lot of concern around this file. That we're getting complaints. I'm not happy to receive those complaints as mayor because it calls our practices into question. So given the fact that, and our staff here knows that we've had discussions about this has been a hot topic because of these complaints from competitors in the insurance industry. I'm just going to suggest I'll look to Peter Fay to get some wording just to separate this one from the main report so we can get some additional information for council on this and what the city's, and 5 more. I just want to know what the legal, I want to look at the complaints and I want to know what the options are for council.
So through you, Madam Chair, this is an information report, just reporting out on what's occurred.
So
And
the
perhaps
contract
if
extension's already happened?
That is the extension already occurred? I believe it has. I think there was council authorization in
So
July.
there's asking for another 15,000 right here.
No, it's not. I'm sorry. The 15,000 that you're seeing there was the previous RFP. It was a 5-year contract at approximately 3 years, 3 million per year.
So if
That's
this is,
your 15.
Okay, so if this is being given to us just for information purposes, why are we getting this list just for information purposes?
Madam Chair, I believe that's part of the purchasing bylaw in terms of a quarterly report out on purchasing activity that's been authorized through council or through bylaw.
Okay.
CAO, would you like to respond?
Thank you. Through your chair. So this report is generated because of the bylaw, that's right, and it actually allows council to have the questions that you're asking now in terms of the transparency to yourselves and the public, and that's why we're here. On this particular item, I've had an opportunity to speak with staff as well about the options. This was a 3-year extension after a 5-year duration that was approved by council and over the summer months for many of the reasons that have been outlined already. And so one of my questions as well was, because the regional governance issue is now resolved, in hindsight, perhaps the extension could have been brought forward on a 1-year basis versus a 3-year basis. And so if council wants to examine or explore the opportunity to go to tender once again, what does that look like? So I'm hearing your questions, Mayor, thank you. And I think one option, because of the timing, this insurance renews, I believe, January 1.
January the 1st.
January 1, 2020. So I anticipate if council would like to consider putting to market, that's about a 6-month process on this type of file, that it can be done for January 1, 2021. And so we can bring back a memo or information as you requested, and then council can consider from there if that's something that you'd like to do.
Yeah, and so I'm not sure if it requires a motion. I just want more information. If canceling costs taxpayers more, the last thing I want to do is cost taxpayers more. I just get I get alarmed when I'm being told there's no one else that wants a tender, there's no competition, and I have companies writing me and asking to meet, saying that we would have made a submission significantly less. That makes me frankly livid, and so I want an explanation about that. I don't want taxpayers to be paying more for something that they don't have to. We get complaints all the time as elected officials about looking out for taxpayer dollars. When I get complaints like this, I think we're rightfully angry and want an explanation. And so I want to get a full brief on this, and whatever we need a motion, or that can be done without a motion, I think we need to have all the details.
Thank you, through Chair. I believe we can take it as staff direction without a motion, and we would come back with that information as you requested, and then council can deliberate from there.
Thank you very much. Councillor Paleshi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I understand the frustration that council has. This is another report, and I think it was directed by council in the past to have this come forward for information. But it's something else that we need to keep in mind, look at, and pay close attention to when these things come back up for renewal and staff bring a report to members of council for our ability at that time to ask the questions. It's difficult, though, as a councillor on this side to see a report come through here. We have a total of 98 items, 26 from Public Works. So we have, and if Public Works comes here, they're bringing 26 items here before us, and they can talk about and speak to, but we have 96 that we actually have to look at and try and be aware of and remember. Oh yeah, it was in 2014 we put that forward for an extension of. And that's where it kind of goes back. So I understand the mayor's looking for additional information, and I too, seeing these and trying to recall those reports that have come forward, am also going to be asking for additional information on some of the items. So I don't know if, I know you've highlighted that one here today, but I have 5 more that I request some additional items. So is it staff direction? Is there a motion? Do you want those numbers now? Do you want me to flip them to you later?
Thank you, through you, Chair. If it's information request, that can be, you can give us the list openly now, or that can be done through email. We're always happy to provide information. Understanding the process here in Brampton is, so council examines and approves the budget, including capital, and then that's it. And then over time, a couple months later, you get a project initiation report. And the project initiation report does just that. It only initiates the procurement. And then council really never sees it again. Staff go away, staff has an evaluation team, staff selects the vendor gets to work. So this report provides that clarity of who got it and for how much. Otherwise, council and the public wouldn't see it. So that's why the report's here. And certainly if you have additional information requests related to these, we're happy to do that. I don't think it requires a motion, it's just information request. So again, you can tell us now or by email or.
Okay, so I'm happy to flip those to you for the information to come back. And I guess what I'm trying to understand, and I know it was prior to even I think it was prior to 2010, before any of us were up here elected. John might know, when you took out council's ability to actually be involved in the procurement process, and which was a good thing at that time, and still a good thing here today. But then it's taking our kind of ability to understand or information coming to us prior to kind of the decision to be made on who goes where and what goes to what specific company. And I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity in the future to kind of change the way we do things. And I don't want to get council involved in the procurement process. But what I'd like to do is maybe a greater level of detail on the specifics as to what we're actually procuring, if that's an opportunity, and maybe by way of public consultation and meetings with staff to get a better understanding of that specific item. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Vicente.
Just so that it's stated here for members of council, the procurement process that we go through now is, in terms of public, is very visible and transparent. Would that not be correct?
Through you, Chair. Yeah, so anything over $100,000 is posted on our e-bidding site. So that's online for anyone to see, vendors, public.
So if you could, through you, Madam Chair, just walk us through what that process looks like, how long it takes, and what happens behind the scenes with staff to select an eventual proponent to do work for the city.
So just through you, Chair, just to clarify the CAO's remarks when he said the reports come, we call them begin procurement reports. So that's what he meant, the reports that justified going forward. So anything over $1 million we do bring to council and get permission to go ahead on that. So I just want to clear that up. These reports are like in past tenses for transparency and just gives you all the information. Anything over 100,000. So when staff, anything over 100,000, they put together the scope of work, the RFP, the tender, what have you, and post it on the site. The vendors bid on that. If it's a tender, it's usually kind of a low bid thing. If it's an RFP, it's evaluated and then awarded based on technical and financial. Once that happens, a report, depending on the dollar amount, goes through staff. Anything over $1 million is approved by myself and the CAO. Once those contracts are awarded, they're put back up on the site for anyone to see what was awarded. So all these contracts, anything over 100, has already been posted there.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. And so businesses who provide a variety of different services to municipalities like ours, do they need to sign up and be on an approved vendors list in order to bid on these particular jobs?
Yes, so through your chair, so they can buy a yearly subscription, and that would give them visibility for all of our contracts and any other municipalities that are on there. And there's about 150 municipalities that are on there now. If they want to look, though, they can look for free. And if they choose to just want to download one, they can pay a nominal fee for that.
So if I could use the term equal opportunity, there is equal opportunity for any company to be able to see, and once they go through a registration process, to actually bid on any project that the city puts out for tender. Would that be correct?
Through you, Chair, that's correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Vicente. So there's no motion required. I believe staff, Mr. CAO, you have the direction needed as per the questions from Mayor Brown and Councillor Paleshi. Oh, okay, wonderful. So a motion to receive the report moved by Councillor Vicente. All those in favor? Thank you. That motion is carried. It is close to 11:30. I believe announcement 4.2 is here. As per Councillor Willen's amendment to the agenda. Do we have the 4.2 presentation and announcement here? Yes, we do. Thank you very much.
If I may, to address you, this is my, personally, this is my 25th trip to this podium to announce the Santa Claus nighttime parade. It was 26 years ago that we decided we were going to do this, and we fought through a lot of interesting situations. Ho, ho, ho! And to help us, Christmas! Ho, ho, ho! There. Oh my God! 3 days to the parade and nobody's excited? You see all the councils are looking marvelous? Marvelous? Have you finished saying what you want to say? No. But that's all right. Feel free to interrupt me. I plan to. Councillors, you all look marvelous. Patrick, you're back.
How was the trip? Very successful? No, North Pole. North Pole is beautiful. Actually, I'm going to tell you a story. I was at the North Pole yesterday sitting relaxing, and I got a text from some guy named Gary Collins. And I'm going, Gary Collins, I know that name, but I don't know where to place it. So I went into my two books that I have, the naughty list and the nice list. I always check the nice list first, and it's alphabetical, and I go through, and there's no Gary Collins. So I opened up the naughty look, and I went down there, and let's see. Yeah. Oh, no. Oh, there he is. Big asterisk beside it, which means he's working on getting better. He's got 42 more sleeps. And then I was asked if we were going to drop by and visit council. And the text said, you're going to see, Mayor Bowman. I said, Mayor Bowman? Hold on, I'm a little confused here. So I went back into the history. I looked under Mayors Brampton. I went, Susan, yeah, she's gone. Linda, yeah, she's gone. Patrick, well, he's still here. And I said, well, Jeff's like, no, something. Anyways, I'm here. I'm glad to see that you're all excited to see me. Dougie's passing the candy canes around. He probably took a bunch for himself. That's his lunch. So 42 more sleeps. So I'm going to let this gentleman talk for a minute. Yeah, I'm going to go up there and say hello to everybody like I always do. Hello, young lady.
Hello.
You doing good?
Always.
As I was saying,
You look nervous.
this is my 25th trip to the podium as involved in the parade. I am now been blessed as the honorary chairman, and with me is Barb Chambry, who is the chair of the Santa Claus Parade this year. So this Saturday at 5 p.m. we'll be celebrating the 25th anniversary of our nighttime parade. The parade itself was resurrected in 1985 by three individuals, two of them involved from the Board of Trade, and one esteemed member of the bureaucracy of the city, Bob Cranch. We switched it to a nighttime parade in 1995. And looking at the results, it's got to be one of the smartest decisions ever made around the table. Number of people that's come to the curb is 100,000. The estimation 1 year was 250. And it just boggles the mind when you think of the size of the city. We're talking well over a third of the population. And we get better every year. As a chairman, I feel like the surfer that caught a tsunami. It just gets better and better. And it's because of people like Barb and the help from the Rotary and a couple of other members of our committee who are hiding at the moment. Chris Rumsey and Richard Beagle. This parade has just increased all the time. We're lucky because we have parade with sponsors, because if we didn't have the sponsors, the parade would not happen. Just as a side note, I understand the entry fee to the Toronto parade is something like $250,000, a 3-year commitment, and every 2 years they have to pay for a new float to be built. We're a community parade, and we're very proud of that. We're all volunteers. We give our time to do this, and I'm sure that Barb hasn't added hers up, but at one point trying to put a report together for the province, I figured out I had put 500 hours into the parade myself, not looking at anybody else in 1 year.
In 1 year.
It was just astonishing, and it wasn't hard. You go to meetings, you got to do this, you got to do that, and it just continues. We've had sponsorship. One of the longest term sponsors we've had is of course the Rotary Club of Brampton. They've come on board and they have been extremely helpful and supportive year after year. And because of their sponsorship, there's actually 2 new inflatable items in the parade this year, which we light, as you know, from the inside. We also have a great sponsor from 407 ETR. 10 years they've been helping us. Other major sponsors: Tim Hortons, Electra Utilities, Mattamy Homes, Delta Bingo, and the Downtown Business group BIA. The city of Brampton has been so supportive that once again, we could not do it without the help of the people of Brampton. Because we spend a lot of our meetings with employees of the city, fine-tuning everything, getting the safety fences up, etc. The police have been working with us year after year. They send off-duty police are there. There are on-duty police there. There are auxiliary people. They're all out. These people are all contributing. The Canadian Progress Club took up a challenge that I handed them in 1995, and it was to run a food drive. I proposed a way that they could do it and handle it efficiently, and I am totally astonished to see that's exactly the plan that they're still following. They're in a decorated vehicle, they collect the food, it goes out. We have given, the people of the city of Brampton have given thousands and thousands of pounds of food to the food banks in the city. And so, once again, it's the community giving back to the community. We also have people that come in and we pick up the letters to Santa Claus, and those Santa letters are answered. And that's important to the kids. Over 6,000 students, high school students, have amassed 60,000 community service hours working in the parade as the costume characters. That's a significant contribution because once again, these 6,000 people suddenly understand that putting service hours in, community service hours, can be fun. It is not an onerous, I gotta go and clean toilets or whatever, which is what the usual argument is. Oh, I can't have them do that. There are so many ways that they can find to do this, and it's just astonishing. The parade starts at 5 o'clock sharp. It runs across Sproul from Ken Willans to Main Street and then south to Elgin. And we are greeted, well, as you can tell, it's an emotional issue for me. I've invested a lot of time and a lot of love in this. And just to see the looks on the faces of the kids makes it worthwhile. And when you go down the route, I usually follow the Santa Claus float. When you get down the route and you see those kids leaping up from the curb and a wall of love coming at Santa Claus, as a volunteer, you get immediate repayment for what you're doing, because that's why we do it. And I hope you could. Absolutely. We're all volunteers, and we invest our time to give this parade to the community, and we thank you for giving us that opportunity. Any questions? If there are any questions that you want answered, we'll try and answer them for you.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Santa. And I certainly appreciate all the amazing work that's put into the Santa Claus Parade. Barb is my neighbor, so I see her very busy during this time of year. We do have a few questions. Councillor Willans.
No questions. Thank you, John, for all your work on your committee for doing it. I remember when you went to the night, when the nighttime, because I was involved with minor lacrosse back then, and we were all excited, and we got a float put up there, and I think Bowman walked down the street in his shorts. I think my older brother was in a gorilla suit beside him.
Well, we don't like to mention his knees and things.
And it was wonderful, and it was very well received by the community. Being at night, they got to see the lights, and it carried on, the Christmas tradition right in through December. But it was really exciting. We had a Brampton Plumbing at the time is where I was working, and they generously donated the flatbed for us. We fixed it all up in the shop, and we probably had 30 kids on that float, and every one of those kids just had smiles from ear to ear. It was phenomenal. But thank you very much for continuous and keeping it going, all of you. And thank you, Santa, for when you are down from the North Pole, you have a short stop in the Northwest in our wards. the best words of Brampton, because Santa lives there. So that'll be an extra bonus there for me. But again, thank you, Glenn, Rotary, everybody that's involved, even the Board of Trade back then. And Chris is always a big supporter of it. And then you guys make it seamless. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Mayor Brown.
Just to echo the comments of Councillor Willens, thank you for everything you do. This is a very special event in the city, and I know it wouldn't happen if it wasn't for the sacrifice and dedication of volunteers. So Barb and team, thank you on behalf of the city. This is a phenomenal event, and let's spread the word. I think the more kids we have out there to see the magic of a Santa Claus parade, the better. And so I think all of us councillors can use our social media to spread the word as well. But there's nothing better than, as you said, to see the happy faces on a sea of children. So on behalf of the city, thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
And thank you, Santa Claus, for not putting all of us on the naughty list.
Well, Dougie made enough room for himself. Just so you all know, there's a very special event this year in the parade. I don't know if anybody's mentioned it to you. Santa has a brand new sleigh.
All right.
Brand new. So we're very excited. We're going to see a preview of it on Friday. So we're very, very excited about that. And because the other one was getting a little tough to handle. But I'm looking forward to seeing you all at the parade. Hopefully you all make it. Jeff, I'm going to throw a challenge out to you. Uh-oh. I'd love to see you at the parade in your shorts.
Oh, dear.
No, you wouldn't.
I
really
want to see that. All right,
We'll see what we can do.
Yeah,
all right, now remember, 42 more sleeps till Christmas. Start behaving, working very, very hard now. I know you all work very hard for council and you do a lot of good stuff for the city. I've heard many, many, many positive things this year from a lot of people in the city of Brampton. You guys should be proud of the job you're doing. It's amazing how it's turned around and how nice it is to see everybody working together as a team. So congratulations for that. Merry Christmas, and it is Merry Christmas. See you Saturday night at 5 o'clock.
Merry Christmas.
Bye-bye.
And I hope I see some of you at the VIP reception earlier.
You will.
Thanks, Jeff.
And did we have a chance to say what the parade route is for families that want to go? And
Yes, I did. It would start at Ken Willens Drive on Sproul, comes out Sproul. Don't recommend you go there because it is wall-to-wall people. We make a left turn onto Main Street and go straight down Main Street to Elgin. And that's why Brampton can have a successful Santa Claus parade and Mississauga can't. They ain't got a Main Street.
And I can just add that the best viewing area is in front of Gage Park.
Okay.
Because it's dark and everything looks beautiful down there, and there's not as many people. So if you have people that are asking where to go, from Gage Park down to the Brampton Mall, basically.
What a great ward.
Yes.
And-
To
and-
Councillor Bowman's point, he
And-
said
and
that
Chris-
it goes through the best wards, wards 1 and 3.
And Chris Rumsey will be handing out hot chocolate. Is the marquee set up? Yeah, it is. Yep, there's hot chocolate and inflated balloons for the kids. So, and they're opposite Gage Park.
So big thank you again. All of council will be there marching in the parade. And I hear that we're going to be looking a little bit different this year while we're marching in the parade. So just a heads up.
You're wearing shorts too.
You're marching?
No, you guys are on the horse float, yes, but
Yeah.
you're gonna look different, okay?
Okay, well, we'll buy that. And you know, it's a long way back to the parade in 1985 and 1986 when council members came into a parking lot, decorated golf carts, and went down the parade route in golf carts. And I'll tell you, the most astonishing thing was when we went to the night parade, I had no idea what the response was going to be. Previous year, Sunday afternoon, 12 to 15,000 people. First parade, 60,000 people showed up. And we haven't looked back. And it's just incredible. We were blessed. But as I say,
And the weather looks good for Saturday.
oh yes, no rain, no snow. So we're good.
Thumbs up.
Let's get out of here. Merry Christmas. We got more parade business to look after.
Picture.
Sorry?
Oh, gee. They want a picture with Santa Claus, obviously. They're not with us.
I don't know. Do you want the marshal? They can have the marshal shot. We'll find out. Yeah, you didn't know one of my taxes.
Oh.
can't you? He doesn't own a tile. He does. So, what was it lights up? Okay, so we're gonna do a picture? Yeah. Who's taking, oh, the gentleman up there.
I'm a neighbor.
Yeah, I'm just trying to balance. Doug, you get over this side. Gotta balance the weight.
You shouldn't be in the middle.
Hold on, please. Thank you. I've got it.
Thank you, Santa. Santa. Pleasure. It's always an experience visiting you guys. Merry Christmas. Naughty miss.
Not the weightless. I lost weight, 40 pounds.
Where? See?
Well, that was a very jolly surprise. Next item on the agenda is 8.2.3. That item was considered under consent. 8.2.4 was put into consent. 8.3.1 was considered in consent, which brings us to 8.3.2, a discussion item under my request regarding a remembrance banner for lives lost to gender-based violence in Brampton at City Hall. So this is just a very quick update in terms of where we are at on our action plan to increase public awareness and education on the item of gender-based violence and domestic violence in the city. Do I point backwards or forwards? Okay. These are all the names of the women and children in Brampton whose lives were lost due to gender-based violence, and also acknowledgement of the thousands of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. We as a council passed a motion a few months ago to increase public awareness and education on this issue, and since then we had a roundtable with various organizations at the region of Peel who gave us some recommendations on what we can do moving forward to address the growing concern of domestic violence in the city. And just as recently as last week, we could be potentially facing another 2 names of children on this list that we would probably acknowledge next year. So this is again a summary of all of the things that have happened so far since we passed that motion. That brings us to November. And one of the action items coming from the roundtable discussion that we had in, I believe it was October or September, September, right? They suggested that we put a banner at City Hall, similar to the banner that they have in Paris, France, to remember the lives that were lost due to gender-based violence. And since then, we have proceeded with that recommendation from the various stakeholders and organizations to commemorate the following names as listed up here. So the banner is going to be similar to the Remembrance Day banner that's been hanging at City Hall for Remembrance Day. And again, the banner is just to acknowledge to our city staff and anyone who comes into City Hall, increasing public awareness on the lives that have been lost due to gender-based violence. In addition to that, some of the other things we have done is under Councillor Fortini's leadership, looked into at the region of Peel having a women's shelter here in Brampton. And the recommendations from that initiative from Councillor Fortini will be coming forward in the spring of 2020, as well as in November at Regional Council. In the next couple of weeks, we will be seeing some new reports and information regarding the services that are provided at the Region of Peel to support women and children who are experiencing this issue, and also more specifically homelessness in the Region of Peel. So here are some of the other upcoming things that are happening. Next week, we're going to be proclaiming the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, to be presented at Brampton Council to acknowledge November the 25th. The banner will start to be displayed on November the 17th, and regional staff is going to be reporting back, scheduled to report back to Regional Council on an update on what the region is doing on the issue of domestic violence. By November 25th, as I said, hopefully starting next week, the banner will be hanging in City Hall so that we will be increasing public awareness on the lives that we are losing in tragedy due to gender-based violence. And then that banner will be hung until December the 6th, which is the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women. It's the anniversary of the Montreal Massacre at Polytechnique University in Montreal. So that's kind of just an update from me in terms of what we've been doing as a team, as a coalition of women here at the City of Brampton to increase public awareness on the issue. And I just wanted clarification whether or not we could pass a motion just to acknowledge and support that the banner be displayed here at City Hall. So I'll just put that forward and would like the support from council, of course. So, Councillor Willens.
Just for clarification, since this is the first we've seen it through you, Chair, is this banner already made?
The banner is currently designed, yes. It's being designed.
Paying for this? Is this through the region and we're just displaying it?
No, this is through the City of Brampton.
So I'd rather see a report come back on this first. I'm not sure if I'm in favor or against it. I don't mind all the recognition. I think that's great that you're moving this forward, but I mean, I'd like to see the cost, and nothing against the displaying the banner, but just the cost. This is the first we've seen it because it does say a discussion item, and I don't know if. Well, I'll let the other councillors speak. But
okay,
thank you.
Councillor Fortini.
Thank you for bringing this forward. You know, when we started this last year, I experienced an incident as a single mother with 2 kids living in the shelter way down in Dundas, and it was very hard for her to go back and forth between her job, dropping off the kids, and it was a temporary for about 3-4 weeks until she moved into her place. So I've been bringing this back to the region, back and forth with your help, Paul Vicente, and also Ned Groves, that we need a shelter here, mostly for women with children. There's a lot of women who want to get out of relationships and they have nowhere to go and they're scared. And I think maybe something that they have a place to stay for a month, 2 months, 3 months until they get on their feet, and with the help, it will help. And this triggered a lot of these other things, which I'm glad that I got you and Paul and Ned Groves involved. And I'm willing to support this, and thank you for bringing it forward.
Thank you, Councillor Fortini. Councillor Medeiros, and then after that, I believe Al had a response to Councillor Willen's concerns.
Would you like to go to Al first?
Sure, Al, go ahead.
Through the chair, so staff have been working in regards to getting the banner done. It's something that we can certainly absorb through the community services budget. It's a nominal cost, but the plan right now is that the banner will be installed in the chambers by November the 19th. And it'll be ready for Wednesday, November the 20th, which the proclamation will come to council in support of this most important initiative. The likely cost is less than $1,000. I believe it was about $865 plus tax.
Thank you. Councillor Medeiros.
Thank you, through the chair. Again, I think I appreciate the sentiment. I think it's noble. My only concern would be around the listing of the names of the consent. So have families consented to having their respective I guess, you know, they're fallen victim, you know, and I just find that that's a sensitive subject with certain families. So is that something that we get consent? Yeah.
I could answer that question, Councillor Medeiros. So the names were provided from PCAWA and Interim Place. Interim Place also had a public walk, as you know. This is what kind of initiated this in the summer, where the names of all of the victims in Peel were published publicly on social media, etc. And it was, in fact, PCAWA who provided the names, and their logo will be on the banner as well.
Okay, so through the chair, so this organization already reached out to the families and got their authorization?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Brown.
I think this is a great initiative, and I just highlight, I remember being at the round table at the Davis Center for Families, and council members that attended that day, we had the opportunity to go and visit the Safe Center of Peel. And this idea of the banner was originally raised when we had all the stakeholder groups that work in this space say this would be a beautiful initiative for the city. And so thank you, Councillor Santos, for showing leadership on that request. And I think it will help drive attention to the elimination of violence against women. And I think they'll be pleasantly surprised we were able to action this so quickly. It was only suggested about 2 months ago, and they showed us photos from Paris, and it really was a wonderful initiative. So great work, and I'm 100% behind it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and Councillor Bowman.
Thank you very much. Through you, Madam Chair. Just a question: how will the thousands of missing and murdered Indigenous women be featured on this banner? How are they being recognized? I guess it's to you.
Thanks, Councillor Bowman. So it's going to be recognized consistent with how PCAWA and Interim Place acknowledged in the same way during their walk itself by using the words themselves on the banner. So it's consistent with PCAWA, Interim Place, and in fact, PCAWA was pivotal in putting the banner together.
Okay, so we've discussed it with the local Indigenous groups that are represented in Brampton as well?
Yes, I would imagine so. PCAWA used the exact same wording in their walk and in their acknowledgement of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Paleshi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know what this is just here for information, right? Okay. So what I'd like to see, if you can take this back by any chance, I love initiatives like this, and it's all about awareness, really, is what we're trying to achieve here, and bring awareness to, some horrible events that have happened, not only in the city, but in Canada. And I don't know what this banner is going to look like. I don't know what any, literature that goes out is going to look like. I don't know what any social media presence is going to look like. What I've seen over the last, since this horrible incident that happened in wards 2 and 6, is that there isn't enough being done by way of politicians, media, to get the proper information out. So I saw some videos that had done a lot of talking about an incident. Not one of these videos, not one of these articles pushed a phone number that people can call, pushed any kind of support that is out there for people to be able to rely on, to call, to ask questions, to find out more information. This is exactly what needs to happen in initiatives like this, is we need this opportunity by way of the flag that we're going to be raising, social media presence, posts, literature, to get there is a number of organizations that are out there that will help, including the current women's shelter here in Brampton, that can help people with this, and I don't want to put a label on anything, but I think that needs to be our number one, to ensure that that information is getting out there. That needs to be priority number one, not recognizing or putting dates to events. So I think if you can take that back, Madam Chair, and hopefully, tomorrow at the region or whenever this other, some of these events are coming back, we would like to, I'd like to at least see that.
Thank you, Councillor Paleshi, for that feedback. The banner, as Mayor Brown had mentioned, was actually a recommendation from all of those groups that we spoke to at the roundtable, and so we're following through with the recommendation from PCAWA, Interim Place, and all the other stakeholders who were there. We have an opportunity next week to ask questions when there is a proclamation that's being done. An organization will be accepting that proclamation on behalf of the city, and at that point we can ask them further questions about the other outreach activities that they would like the city to do. Thank you very much. So is a motion required for this banner? It would be great. I'd like to bring forward a motion to support the banner being put up here at City Hall. All those in favor? Thank you. That motion is carried. Up next is item 8.5, question period for this section. Do any members have any questions regarding matters in the jurisdiction of this section? Seeing none. We now move to public question period for this.
Through you, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
8.3.3 was an added item from Councillor Fortini.
I apologize,
regarding
Councillor
executive
Fortini. Item 8.3.3.
Through the chair, I was going to say, you forget me. So, Peter, I just wanted to put it on record here. I know there was a complaint filed to myself and 4 other members of council, to the Integrity Commissioner, for printing up the agenda, if you recall. So it's all over social media, and that was done by Bruce Marshall. So I just wanted to make something clear, because I'm a little bit confused when the regional sends links directly to our EA. So who do the EA report to? Is it us or is it the clerk under the new model?
Through you, Madam Chair, the executive assistants to the councillors report to the councillors.
Right. So if something leaks from our office, we're still responsible, and it comes from one of my EA or my assistant, it is my job. I'm sorry, even though I'm responsible, it would be my job to terminate the person, or would be the city or the clerk?
Through you, Madam Chair, we're talking hypotheticals, but the city would assist a member of council if a staff member had to be exited.
That's right, because they report to us, because our line is there. So on the rule number 3, it doesn't say anything about our assistant or EA not printing the in-camera agenda when the region sends their own link. So I'm a little bit confused here why the region sends a link directly to all our assistants through across Mississauga and Brampton, and they're not allowed to print our agenda for us. They do swear under an oath. So what happens when the agenda is printed in the printing room downstairs?
So through you, Madam Chair, I just want to clarify what you're asking about, Councillor. When you refer to rule number 3, you're referring to the Council Code of Conduct.
That's right.
On confidentiality, and you're speaking to access to confidential information by member staff.
That's right.
And I'll probably start by saying I'm not aware that there is a complaint filed with the Integrity Commissioner.
Okay. Well,
I'm not privy to those, so.
They're dragging 4 other councillors plus assistants and EAs out, and it's more of taxpayers' money. There goes another. We could put 2 shade shelters or fix in a park, which complaints doesn't even make sense to me. So and I know it's not.
So through you, Madam Chair, I'm not aware that there's a complaint. I will say that this council, in February of this year, adopted a closed session protocol, and it was reflective of discussions and questions that occurred the previous term of council and the start of this term of council. And the current protocol for the City of Brampton is if there is closed session material, it is distributed to members of council only, digitally, where we can, and there's a separate email with a password. And then that is the responsibility of the member of council to deal with. There are occasions, and you're aware, there may be occasions given the sensitivity or timing or urgency of closed session material that hard copy material is printed on confidential paper, individually watermarked, and put in sealed envelopes only to be opened by the members of council. If there is any printing, there isn't any printing right now that occurs down in the print shop. Any printing of hard copy of closed session is done by up to 3 people. It may just be myself, depending on the sensitivity, or it may involve our Deputy Clerk, Charlotte, or our Business Coordinator, Lori Robinson. So there's only 3 people that actually produce hard copy if necessary. We did also consult with the Region of Peel, and we understand the Region of Peel does send links to the councillors and their assistants for regional closed session business. But I also understand they only send the password to the member of council.
Yes, absolutely, you're correct. But the link is sent directly to their desk, their computer, plus it tells you the password. And we always have the same password. So they're allowed to print our enclosed session. Now, I see if the clerk's assistant or whoever's printing them are allowed to print them, these closing agendas, because they swore an oath, just like our EAs did. So if they work for us, it's up to at the end if something goes wrong, I'm responsible, and then it's to go up to the duty to go up to my son and say, I'm sorry, I can't keep you here no more, but I have to take full responsibility. It cannot come to a point where at the end you're going to come along and say, well, we cannot get them printed, because there's 2 different rules here. The region sends them directly a link. Ours, we have different. So
Through you, Madam Chair, I believe the rules are similar, but I will just say that at the end of the day, our responsibility by council resolution is to provide the information to the member of council. And if a member of council chooses to involve another staff member in their office to review, to print that information, that is that member's responsibility, and it's that member's accountability. So I can't speak to whether or not, if there's any issue with an inadvertent leak or things like that, but that will be the member's responsibility.
Okay, that's what I wanted to get clear. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor Brown.
Tini was sensitive to a complaint that was made about the allegation of sharing confidential information. I think what you wanted to highlight was the fact that you have confidence in your aide to print the material and not read it. And the reality is, I think many members would follow the same practice, that your assistant would print the materials, and the paper that is confidential, they would know not to read. And so I think that is a common understanding, and I hope Councillor Frattini knows no one is questioning his ability to keep confidential information confidential. And you're not allowed to fire Ingrid because the rest of council would picket your office if you did. And we know that she's the ultimate professional, and I know if she's printing her materials, no one at the city has any concerns. So I know you're sensitive about this, but I hope you know no one's would be questioning her ethics. We know she's an incredible professional.
Thank you. There are no further questions on the issue. Councillor Frattini, you're good? Okay. There's no correspondence under item 8.4. Next item is 8.5, councillor question period. Do any councillors have any questions regarding this section? Seeing none. Next section is public question period. Are there any members from the public who have any questions regarding this section? Seeing none. It is 12:05. I'm going to suggest that perhaps we break before we go to public works. So a motion to recess for 45 minutes. Okay, Councillor Vicente, all those in favor? Thank you. We will see you back here at 12:50 p.m.
Session. Welcome back. We are now about to begin the Public Works and Engineering section of today's Committee of Council meeting. We have no staff presentations, and moving on to item 9.2.1 under reports. We have a report from Jay Pittman, the Manager of Parks, Maintenance and Operations, Public Works and Engineering, from October the 4th, 2019, a request to begin procurement, grass cutting, and landscape maintenance services at various locations for a 5-year period in all wards. This item was held by Councillor Paleshi. Councillor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The reason why I held this item was to kind of find out where the various locations were for grass cutting throughout the city. I know it's over 3,000 acres, but if you can narrow that down a little bit. Are we talking boulevards? Are we talking city-owned property with buildings on it? What are we talking about?
So through the chair, it's all boulevards in Brampton. It is open space and parkland, valley lands, ditches on rural roads, and valley lands. So we do a swath on each side of all the recreational trails, and then we naturalize after that piece. And then our staff do the sports field turf maintenance.
Okay.
So that's the divide between the two.
Okay. So let's take a piece of property where they're going to cut. The plan is to go cut on a specific day. Okay. It's a boulevard or whatever the case may be. Walk me through the process of how that starts once everything's been awarded, and that date is coming up for that specific section. Can you walk me through the process of cutting that grass?
So, beginning of each season, we meet with all the contractors, and we go through a mapping process of all the pieces of property they need to cut within the contract. So what happens is we started at a 5-day rotation in the spring and May to help us fight the weed issues that we have because we don't have the pesticides. We do 3 5-day rotations in a row, and then we spread them out over a 2-week period after that. So they will start at point A and efficiently run through a mapping process that we've put together with our staff so that they're most efficient to get to point Z, which is the last piece of their property. So they'll come out. Usually what they'll do is they'll park their vehicles and trailers at a site either off the boulevard and then the machines come off. They start with string trimmers. They pick garbage as they're cutting until the end of the day, and then they wrap all up and they're back out the next morning.
So
And
Sorry, Rob.
and what we've done is we've broken it up. There's 7 areas. So there's each set of wards, and then we've cut the city in half with boulevards, so east and west. And the reason we've done that is just in case we have an issue with a vendor, for us to give the whole boulevard section out to one vendor and then they can't perform, we'd never be able to get the boulevards done.
Right.
So we've tried to section it off so that we get more than one company coming in, so that if something does fail, we can rely on another company to do the work.
Okay. And I guess, and the reason why I ask for that is I often notice a set of crews, and a crew goes out a day prior picking up garbage. And so they're going along, they're picking up garbage, leaving bags, and continue to go, leave a bag, continue to go, and then somebody comes by, picks up the bags, and then it's usually, I think, the next day, or it could be even later on that day, then you'll see the trimmers come out and the machines come out to cut the boulevard. Is that all captured within the same tender?
Yes.
It is.
So through the chair. So there's a maintenance portion to and the tender is worth $3 million a year. So there's a maintenance program, which is litter picking prior to grass cutting even starting. So our staff, Public Works, roads staff, and the contractors go out as soon as the snow is off the ground, and we effectively take a set of roads through Brampton boulevards and pick all the litter through those roads. Once the contract actually starts, then that's when you have them picking up the day prior and then cutting the grass the next day. All of that is encompassed in this one contract.
Okay.
So the actual grass cutting company does the weeding or the litter picking and the cutting all as part of his contract, and it's rolled into the one big contract.
Okay.
So this is to begin the procurement for that process, because our 5-year contract ended this year.
It has ended this year?
It has ended this year.
Okay. So I guess I've had the benefit, although I didn't see it as a benefit at the time when I was younger. My father would take me, if we were going from A to B, he wouldn't take the main roads, he would take these side roads, and eventually I would notice he's looking at the boulevards and around the trees and certain spots, certain areas. So now I find myself, I don't take these side roads. I go to A to B, but I'm looking. So, and what I'm kind of noticing now, Rob, is there's a lot of the undergrowth from the trees that is getting, and it's probably later on in the season, is almost getting out of hand, where we're not cutting that undergrowth, and we know that the undergrowth is an issue for that tree and that tree's survival. But I'm also noticing that the buffer in between the sidewalk and the property line fence of the homes, there's usually some brush, and it's usually buckthorn mixed with a bunch of other stuff, and buckthorn is ridiculous in the city. But then whoever's cutting the grass is getting further and further away in certain areas, and it's not just in certain areas. Actually, it's across the city where I'm starting to notice this a little bit more. Now, they might go back and get it. If they don't get it this week, they might get it in a couple weeks, and that may be fine in the heat of the summer where the growth isn't. It's not really growing that much, and I'm glad that we're on a every week rotation in the spring because it's much needed. And if we have more of a rain after those 5 weeks, you said?
Yeah.
Then I hope we have the ability to say, no, you need to continue that because of the amount of growth. Until we all know that, unless you live in an apartment, we all know that the grass is going to grow out of hand. We need to cut it sometimes twice a week in the spring. So I want to ensure that our contractors, and I know we've talked about this over the last course of this tender, is having these contractors pay more attention to things like that. But then also in our parks, on our paths, and I don't know if it's us going in to pick up the garbage, if it's the cutting that's going on, but our trails that are asphalt, and even the ones that are just the limestone, are taking a beating, especially in the spring and then again in the fall. Like, it's almost coming to a point where they're not safe, and you can see trails are starting to walk through the grass on the side of it. So if we can, I want a conversation to be had with this contractor that, they have not only a level of service that they have to provide to the city of Brampton, but they also have an obligation to report back any issues that they see, and this is ground level, where that conversation needs to be had, where they're ensuring that, if there's a sidewalk that's shifted and it's an issue and it's throughout the city that it's a tripping hazard, then that's our kind of first line of defense, and we need them to have that ability to get back to us. It can't always fall on homeowners or residents that are walking and then phoning, because they're phoning the counselor to say, and I don't mind the phone calls, but I would rather that come from somebody that's gone past it a few times, to let that come back to us.
Absolutely. So through the chair, I'll make sure that we add that component to it, that they do let us know and even take a picture to let us know where we can go back and repair that pathway, whether it's a sinkhole or whether it's just cracked because of wetness due to the spring thaw, and they're cutting over top of it.
And so then just my final question through you, Mr. Chair, and we talked about this before on Richvale in front of Terry Fox, where the sidewalk takes a dip, and so it hasn't happened this year, which is good, but I've noticed it in other areas. So I guess the first snowfall, when the machines are coming down the sidewalks, if the sidewalk turns and they don't really know it turns, they'll go through and the ground's not hard enough to support that, so it causes damage. But if it's snow covered and continues to be snow covered, once that spring comes along, who are the ones that identify that and bring it to your attention to get it fixed?
So through the chair, we have a crew through the roads department inspectors that actually mark down all those areas that are turf damaged, and it's up to the contractor to pay for that to be repaired. We do have a contractor that goes out and repairs all that turf, and it's paid for by the contractor who's made the damage to the turf.
And I'm not beating up on the contractor. I haven't heard. I think that they're I think that goes off without a hitch, and they either repair or ensure that it is repaired and safe. So which is good. But I just wanted them to have that ability to have that kind of open door where we need them a lot, relaying some of that information back. Even though they're a contractor, it's the City of Brampton logo on the side of the truck, or the contractor as the City of Brampton on the side of the truck. So people don't see them as a contractor. They see them as a City of Brampton worker.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Pleshy. Our next speaker is Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. To the Chair, sorry, I just kind of got sidetracked. But Mr. Gasper, we had a number of complaints from residents about the cutting and some, like Councillor Pleshy mentioned, around the trees, and just some complaints that it wasn't cut fast enough, or they didn't cover the whole hill in certain areas. So with this new tender, are we able to create a penalty or design a contract that has a penalty, or possibly cancel the contract if we're not satisfied based off of legitimate complaints that come in?
So through the chair, the existing contract, we do vending reports on the contractor. We hold payment until the work's done properly. When we get complaints or when our inspectors go out to check the work that's been done. We sometimes do have contractors that we have to stay on top of a little more than others. We have put in, because of the pesticide ban, we are putting into this contract that we have the median, the hard surface medians, and the fence lines where the shrub beds and the trees are. We have them go in and string trim that on 3 separate occasions during the course of the summer, which is pretty much at the beginning a couple times, and then towards the end where the rainy season starts again in September, to help us with those issues. And we've asked that the contractors, when we meet this spring, that their machines go 1 foot into those shrub beds to make sure that they get everything.
Okay, great. So similar to how our snow plows have a tracking system, is it possible to include some type of technology in the procurement process for the companies to have some kind of way for us to track where the mowers have gone, and so that we can monitor and be able to say what has been done, what hasn't been done, or hold those accountable that kind of cut corners?
Through the chair,
literally.
We haven't looked at it. I think it's possible. The system that we have, I'd have to go back to the roads group and see if we could expand it into the grass cutting. We have expanded it into our forestry area so that we could make sure that our forestry contractors are doing what they're supposed to do. But it's definitely something we can look into.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be great. It's just giving our residents a way to also kind of see what's being done, and then us to be able to hold
absolutely
contractors that we're accountable. I know you've said you've held payment to contractors. Do you have a number of how often that's happened, or how much has been held back from contractors?
Through the chair, we could probably get that information. We have the information. Each day, at the end of the day, a inspector sends through to our contract admin group what's done and what's not done.
Okay.
So through that process, we know what's been cut, what hasn't been cut. We'll actually contact the contractor immediately and have them go back the next day. So there are times where we've gone out and say, you haven't finished this work, we're only going to pay you for a set amount. It doesn't happen a lot because we usually catch it the day of, and they have to do it the next day. But when it does happen, we hold back until it gets done properly.
Okay.
We also, through the chair, we also have the ability to decrease number of cuts. So if we have a dry summer, we may cancel a cut middle of July.
Okay.
That allows us to either save the money, or if we have a wet fall, we can add another cut in. So that is included in the contract. So we can, if we decide that through budget process we want to cut 2 cuts from that, that's all part of the contract. So we can either increase or decrease the contract at any time, as long as we give them written notice.
Oh, thank you. Through the chair, that's a great way for us to save some dollars. Great, thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. My next speaker, Councillor Fortini.
Thank you. Thank you, Rob. When does the contract start? Is it April 15th?
Through the chair, normally it'll start anywhere from April 15th and on, depending on when the snow goes away. The spring that we have, if we get a favorable spring where it's warm weather and the grass grows, we've started as early as April 26th, and then we've gone as late as May, after the first week of May, depending on what our spring is like.
Yeah.
So there's no, I mean, when the contract starts, it starts January 2020 or whenever that PO comes out, and then it starts whenever we need the first set of grass cut.
Right.
No different than it doesn't end in October or November. It's a full 5-year service, and if we have a great fall and we can golf until December 15th, then they're cutting grass.
Okay. How many times they cut? Or is it the cutting? Is it every 10 days? Every 12 days?
So through the chair, it's 12 cuts per season. So we try to average that out. The first 3 cuts are 7-day cut, 1-week rotation, so 5 days of cutting. If they miss a day during that week, we expect them to go out on Saturdays. And that helps us with the weed growth during that type of time of season. You'll still see any weed can grow up to 6 inches in 24 hours with the right conditions. Because we don't have the pesticide able to spray the pesticides, the 1-week rotations over 3 weeks helps us combat the weeds. You still have seen seeds of yellow in the spring. There's not much we're going to be able to do that. But then what we do is we take the rest of the summer and spread it out, knowing that we can go to maybe 14-day rotations in July and August because of the drier weather, which allows us to do less than a 12-day cycle in the fall.
Yeah, and that's when it's a dry weather. I know the dandelions, you cut them today, tomorrow the weeds are out there again, and people say they don't cut the grass. They don't actually look at the grass. During the rainy season, like May, usually that's when the grass grows, May and June, it grows faster. If we could like move it up a bit and then stretch the dry season, because that's when mostly the grass you cut it, and then 3 days later you gotta cut it again. What about on the hills? I remember we talked about Lake of Dreams. So we were out there with the community, remember? And we used to go all the way up on the hill now. It looks like we're getting down, 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 and now it's down to the roads. That's one of them. And the other one that's behind in this contract, that we putting behind all the fences, like on the trails, like where Riverstone is and all that. It's going right up the fence. We can cut right around, and also on the trails, go out about 8 feet so people can walk.
So through the chair, no, we haven't put that into the contract for the next 5 years. If through council, we are doing a cost analysis on that now and what it would cost to, I guess, unnaturalize those areas. We're looking at anywhere between $300,000 and $500,000 a year a summer to add to the grass cutting contract if we were to do that. The first one is going to be probably the more expensive because it'll be the first cut of that area if we were to do it. We haven't done it mainly because it's part of our naturalization program of behind all the homes. In certain areas of Bramalea, over the last 40 years, we have cut behind those houses. What we're trying to do with those is naturalize those areas again through Michael Hoy and the engineering group. They're helping us determine areas each year that we will let the grass grow closer to that fence line and naturalize those areas, which will decrease the contract price and allow us as we develop Brampton and get more grasslands, we're hoping that balances the budget out. so that we aren't asking for an increase every year, that we're naturalizing areas so that we can offset the cost.
So I remember in the past, we were cutting up a Lake of Dreams and all these, so we actually did a cutback. Now, some of these homes don't have gates in the back. They're all concrete fences or these wood fences or steel chain link. We used to cut behind the backyards. So to cut there, that means you have to lift up the lawnmower and make gates, which they're not allowed, it's not their fence. Going one path along the backyards, which they were done in the past, now in the last 3 or 4 years, they say, we're not doing it no more, and everything's coming right up to the grass and it's starting to grow in the chain link. It doesn't look good. So, and even up at Lake of Dreams, those hills, they're right down to the sidewalk. We used to cut 3/4 of the way before. So, we cutting all back on all the grass now?
So through the chair, Lake of Dreams, we actually went, once we found out, once that complaint came in from the resident, we actually went out to that spot. We took a photo from the year before. We went back to the contractor. We fixed the issue, and we held back payment because he hadn't been cutting it to the past the tree point on that hill. So we are looking at all of those areas. This contract, we need to look at more of those areas because there is a fine line with where they should be cutting to around ponds off the sidewalk so that we get a cleaner look. I know Councillor Sprovieri years ago used to say, can we cut to top of bank? So what we're trying to do is get our contractors to cut to top of bank without going over that bank, and so that you don't see the higher grass from the road. In some situations you will see it, but we will hold our contractors to making sure that they keep that line for the whole summer.
Can we look maybe on the budget at least twice out of the year behind the fences? You don't have to cut every 7 days, but twice out of the year so it doesn't get to 4 feet, the grass, and then it becomes a thick weeds and all. Then really even a weed whacker can't cut through that because now it becomes bigger and thicker, and it becomes trees and all bushes after. So maybe twice a year at least just run the lawnmower. The width of the lawnmower is about 5.5 feet, 6 feet. And by the time it comes back another 3 feet, you're cutting 8 feet. You're going that way, you gotta come back anyway. So see if we can do at least twice a year.
So through the chair,
we have lots of complaints on that.
We can definitely look at it. We haven't done it in the past, just
3 years.
for the simple fact that we're naturalizing and the costs to the budget, that the increases to the budget. We can definitely look at fence line cutting. There's some fence lines that you won't be able to cut because of terrain and the steepness of the slope. But we can definitely look at that and look at the costs that would increase the budget by for 2020.
Yeah, please, because I know it's not to naturalize. We got tons of land. That 4 feet along the fence is more costly, twice a year to cut. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So we have the report before you with the associated recommendations. Would a member of council like to move the report? Councillor Fortini has moved the report. All in favor? Carries. Members of council, our next item is item 9.2.2, a staff report regarding the Gage Park special events for Ward 3. Do any members have questions or comments on the staff report? Councillor Medeiros.
Thank you, through the chair. So I guess the staff, in terms of, understandably, that is supposed to be a gentle use park. And I appreciate that staff's recommendations in terms of moving to Rosalie Park. However, Gage Park does set and is it's quite our gem in the city, and it's great to see events there. I guess for me is always the confusion around, and my sort of mantra has always been, if we allow it for some groups, we have to allow it for other groups. And I guess the criteria about what other groups that would entail, and understanding there's been historic sort of events there. But I guess, in terms of a question, are there not sort of techniques, or could we not set up the park in a way that would allow for more use in terms of events at Gage Park? This thus would not limit it to one or two or three groups that go there, and there'll be more sort of use. So I guess what I'm trying to say is the opposite. Appreciating the sensitivities environmentally there, but at the same time, I would like to see if there's anything we can do in the park that would just allow for increased usage of that. Because again, it's I think it's a special backdrop. It's a place where you attend an event there. I host my community barbecues there, and it's a special place in the city. So I'd hate to lose some of those events. So are there not technologies or practices or things that we can do in that park to change it, to keep the character, but at the same time allow for more use of it? Does that make sense? Or
so through the chair, I guess
I know it's a struggle with that.
it's the compaction on the soil is what the issue is, and it is even though it's our signature park in Brampton, it is a neighborhood park for a lot of people that live around that area. And I know we bring this up with other parks that we have throughout the city, having an event in there every weekend really takes away from the neighborhood kids using their own park. Yeah. Not to mention if we have these big events of 500 and over, it's going to really do damage to the existing turf, which in turn doesn't help the root system of the trees that are there. So we have 100-plus-year-old trees in that park. I think the recommendation is we can soften it a bit. Do we want large events? Absolutely. We would say no as the Parks Department. Would we want smaller events? What would the number be? Yeah, that's always hard. And I know we've gotten lots of rentals at different parks where they say we're having 100 people and 500 show up. And then what do you do with that? I think at the end of the day, if we want to preserve our signature park and the trees in that park, we're going to have to look at slowing down the events that are in the park. I think the reason we use Rosalie, and it might be that in between while we look at Riverwalk, and then how does Riverwalk encompass Rosalie to make it the best venue downtown that we can have? I think Rosalie provides a great open space that we can put electricity in, and we can put a stage area in, and we can make it better than, well, we're not going to make it better than Gage Park, we all know that, just because Gage Park is what it is, and the scenery there is beautiful, the flowers are amazing, but as a special event venue, Rosalie Park could be a great park. It has all the same parking that we use for Gage, and realistically, it's a couple 100 yards away from the existing. I understand what you're saying, and everybody wants to book Gage Park. Weddings, pictures, everybody. But at the end of the day, it's our Brampton signature park. I've been here 50 years. Yeah. I know I wasn't born here, but my whole childhood was here, and my adulthood, and I've worked for the city for over 35. So between Gage and Ching, those are our two real gems that we have, and I think we need to preserve them.
So through the chair, from a technical perspective, notwithstanding we appreciate the beauty, but from a technical perspective, be it the roots, the flowers, so after we do, for example, a big weekend event there, what is the damage? What is the cost? Is there a cost to the city to replace and repair all that vegetation and trees and so on?
So through the chair, I think it's more the maintenance component. Okay. Definitely we could up the maintenance levels to the park. We could aerate it more often. We could seed and dress it more often. And it will help that part of it. But if you continue to have a number of events at it, the compaction on that soil will not come back. I know we added back in 2011 an irrigation system, which has helped it to stay at the way it is today. We would have to up our maintenance program on it to make sure that it thrives.
Survives.
It thrives.
And through the chair, the risk would be, so one is the usage for the community. So by us doing weekend festivals there, we lose access for community residents who just want to have a passive park, and and that's part of the beauty, is just to go for a walk in the neighborhood. I guess, and it's not a technical question, it's always the equity of it. It's always that there are events that get access to it and other events don't. And how do we determine? So I don't know where that, I'll wait for the mayor and Councillor Bowman to speak, but that to me seems the big issue, is around the equity around it. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Mayor Brown.
Thank you, Councillor Vicente. I think we have a bit of a disconnect here in terms of what we're hearing from the public and where this motion would take us. We're hearing from the public that they want to use Gage Park. You talk about it being a local neighborhood park. It's the neighborhood I live in. It's a local park that I would use, and I think it is a great feature for the city. The pushback I'm getting is people are frustrated that events they've been involved in or events they want to host, they can't there. So I'm going to put the motion, is the motion on the floor yet? The recommendation? I'm going to put the recommendation on the floor without item 2 and 3. And in lieu of item 2 and 3, I'll add in that staff investigate the ability to protect the natural environment with increased maintenance. And I would say maybe there's a better way to do this. Maybe the staff is saying don't have events there every week. Okay, well, then we have a policy that you can only have events once every 3 weeks, or you could have a more restrictive renting policy for Gage Park. But there's some great historic events that happen there, and frankly, it is a jewel for the city. And Rosalie Park's great, but it's not downtown. I want people in downtown Brampton, and people will drive to Rosalie Park. Or frankly, if we're going to try to have an event downtown, they won't walk there. I look at our Italian event. Thank you, Councillor Fertini and Palesci, for being the co-host of that last year. They walked right across the street. We had an amazing event. People were dancing and enjoying the beauty of Gage Park. If we had done that at Rosalie Park, I bet you 80% of people, as Councillor Fertini just said, no one would have gone. That's not an option. Rosalie Park is not an option. It's not downtown Brampton. And so the feedback I'm getting in the mayor's office is we want to be able to use Gage Park. Why is it so restrictive? And so I don't think the solution is to throw the baby out with the bathwater and say no one's going to use Gage Park. I think we need to find a solution that protects Gage Park. And I'd say this. We will have more amenities in the downtown in the near future. As I think we all know, we're working on some special things in the downtown, and there may be, I'm mindful of where some of this is in camera, but there are going to be more spaces in Brampton to have celebrations down the road, whether that's 5 years or 10 years, there'll be more spaces. But in the next 5 years, I think it would be a significant mistake and it would be a disconnect from the public wishes if we restricted the use of, or said you couldn't have events at Gage Park. And I think the way to get through this period of time where there is not adequate space in the downtown would be to accept the report, to look at ways for additional maintenance as was suggested, and to get any additional feedback from staff on how to protect our natural environment there. And that may include the option of more restrictive renting, but it's absolutely not saying that you can't have events at Gage Park. Frankly, the event we had for the Italian community, I'd love to see more events like that as long as it was done in a manner that doesn't abuse our Gage Park. But I just want to stress this. The fact that Councillor Madero struggled to even have his community barbecue, he wants to have it in the heart of his ward. And for the 50 people that were there, none of them were being disrespectful towards the Gage Park. They were picking up after themselves. They were doing so in a respectful manner. I'm sure where there's a will, there's a way. This is a great asset to downtown Brampton, and let's find a way in which we can utilize and be proud of Gage Park. It's not simply an environmental feature to walk by and look at. People want to be in the park. And so I want to make sure we can continue to have events. Sorry that I'm passionate about this, but I'm hearing frustration in the community about the inability to use this park, and I want it to be a place to celebrate Brampton, celebrate our downtown.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. Councillor Bowman.
Thank you very much. Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't think I can be as passionate as Mayor Brown, but we do have conflicting objectives here. There's no question about it. Your guys do a phenomenal job keeping Gage Park looking like it does every year. And to be quite honest, I think it looks better every year that I see it. You guys are doing something. My question, and I look up, and there's Dave Harmsworth there, John Sanderson there, who both have events in the park, and I couldn't think of, for instance, the Brampton Concert Band playing anywhere else other than Band Shell. That's where it was designed. That's what the band shell was. It's called the band shell. That's what it's designed for. The music in the park that we have, the Thursday night concert series, they're all wonderful events that people get down to. Is there, and you're the expert, Rob, is there changes in, that report that we had was done back in 2008. Is there changes in grass type, in fertilizers, in all that stuff that would make the maintenance and upkeep of the park easier today than it was in 2008?
Through the chair, I would definitely go back to staff and put a program together that would allow us to look at what types of events we can have and to continue those happening. And then what does that take for our staff to be able to do that?
Yeah,
I can do that.
Because I know,
absolutely.
I know, and I've seen the issues that are created when it's wet, and big trucks are moving in and out. There's no question about that. And again, you guys do a phenomenal job of getting that fixed up and grass growing again in no time. But as a guy who was born and raised here, I love Gage Park too, and I think it is the premier spot in this city for events to happen. And I would hate for events not to happen there. I know there used to be a couple of big events, the nitty-gritty Ramaching Wing Ding that used to happen up at Chinguacousy, and for the last couple of years it failed partly because it was barren. There was no trees there. When it got hot, it got hot. And I don't know how long Rosalie Park would take to grow some really mature trees that provide shade and shelter. I do think that Rosalie is an option for other types of events that don't necessarily need to be in the downtown. It's a phenomenal place. It's a great park. There was a couple of events there last year. I think the Walk for Cancer was there last year as well that I was at. So things like that are great there. But again, I'm a supporter of having events in Gage Park. I'm also very conscious, Michael, up there of the danger of losing those trees. 100-year-old, 150-year-old trees in some cases, and maybe we've got to do more to protect the tree. Maybe we have areas where there's nobody allowed to go around the bigger trees. I don't know what it is, but I'd really like to see if you guys can perform some magic with your team to be able to keep events there.
Through the chair, we'll look into that right away.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. Our next speaker, Councillor Williams.
Yeah, thank you, through you, Chair. Yeah, I'm struggling with this as well, being born and raised in Brampton, and Gage Park was, back when I was downtown, was the only place to go, basically, and we all headed to downtown. I like the mayor's change to the motion here, but maybe perhaps, Rosalie Park is another issue. Maybe part of the report coming back, I know because you mentioned moving things to Rosalie Park. There is some issues in Rosalie Park that were addressed when we wanted to move the farmers market there. It has a lot to do. The place is a swamp if we get 3 days of rain because there's no drainage, there's no storm sewers there to drain the water off. So that could be an issue until we get the Riverwalk done. It's going to be an issue. But Councillor Bowman touched. There's no trees, so that's an issue. And the community around Rosalie Park. Before we even suggest moving anything to Rosalie Park, we should do a reach out. There's 2 or 3 seniors buildings there that back onto that Rosalie Park. So if we're going to have live bands down there, that's going to be a big issue. The YMCA, has anybody talked to the YMCA regarding parking? I know that they would probably say, yes, we can do it for certain things, but they're a big part of that as well. So maybe, and power, you mentioned that before, Rob, in your statement, but maybe in addition to the mayor's addition to 1.2, maybe we could and not necessarily, maybe we don't need a new independent study, but maybe this could be a new job for the city manager, to maybe look at that report, because it was done in 2007, it's kind of outdated. Like you say, Rob, you know as well, there's a lot better things now to do to try to save trees, save turf, a lot more advanced techniques now on what we can do. So maybe have a look at it and take some key points out of that, where they were talking about how the trees would be affected, the compaction of the soil. Maybe there's things we can do to keep some of the events. I'm probably will be frowned upon by some other councillors, but I think we should limit the amount of things that are in there if we do decide to stay in Gage Park. There's some signature events in there, you know, ribbon roll, Dave, the concert band. I mean, they don't have a big impact to the band, but 1903, I think, is when the concert band built that gazebo. Well, it's not a gazebo, it's a bandstand. Keeps referred to in the reports, maybe we can change that. It should be called bandstand, because they've been there. And some of these smaller groups, the weddings, they don't have a big impact. Maybe sit down with the groups like Rotary and say, this is a transition that we want to make. They were a big contributor to Gage Park over a number of years. The skating, I think I understand that they've been approached to maybe contribute to the new splash pad. So here, in one sense, we want to ask them to help fund the splash pad, but on the other side, we're kicking them out of the park. So maybe that's something we should look at. Talk to the groups that are existing, that are there now, and say, you know, we do want to move you out. Let's do it in a way that we can satisfy everybody. Move them out. Is Rosalie Park the right spot? Maybe not. Maybe an expansion of Garden Square could be an option. Then you're in the downtown. Excuse me. But let's not just go past this and without maybe consulting with some of these groups that have been there for years, the small groups to the larger groups, and get the transition smooth so we don't have filling the chambers with people saying, why are you kicking us out? So, I mean, it's a good report in protecting the park. Yes, absolutely. We got to protect the park. Me, of all people. I mean, I understand that. And I really don't want to go against anything we're trying to do to preserve the natural environment in the city. But certainly we have to think of our groups that have been in the park for quite a while and the history of some of the groups. So maybe sit back on this report for a minute, maybe just make some changes here and have a look at it and come back with a more thorough report with the impact from or input from the groups that are there now, currently there. I'm a big favor of not adding any events down there because there's a lot of stress. There is a lot of stress on that park. I've seen it after a weekend of rain from, you know, Cars and Stars and Ribbon Roll and all these people, and even the Santa Claus parade sometimes there's damage because we've had wet weather on Santa Claus parade. So, but let's limit the amount of people down there, and let's maybe have a look at this and see how we can keep the groups that are currently using it happy and do a transition somewhere. But I believe the mayor stated it's important to have them in the downtown core. I'd have to correct the mayor. Rosalie is part of the downtown, but we won't get an argument there. But anyway, let's maybe have a second look at this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Willens. May the chair be heard? I do have two more people, but they'll be speaking to the motion and to the mover of the report with the amendment. I like what the mayor said, that where there's a will, there's a way. And I think that there's a way for us to use the park in a way that respects the incredible natural history that exists there. I learned a long time ago when I moved to Brampton that those trees they're old black oak trees, some of them. And they are far older than 150 years old of age. Perhaps as part of staff's work to find ways to improve the maintenance on the park, perhaps we should also consider that I think the greatest risk to the trees and to the roots is the weight of vehicles and vehicle treads passing over lawns and even over the skate pad, because that applies pressure to the root systems that with certainty go underneath that pad. We should probably consider a moratorium on any heavy vehicles, with the exception of perhaps city-owned vehicles who are doing maintenance to the park. And that would probably go a long way towards preserving those trees and to keeping heat, diesel, and gasoline exhaust fumes away from them, and treading more lightly on the parks there. So speaking to the amended report, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking at the aerial view of that corner, and I know that we have really great events that happen at Gage Park, and we want to encourage people to come downtown. So I just have a question. You know, looking at the return on investment that these events do bring us, if we were to move the location to Rosalie, what losses could we hit?
Through the chair, I think it's an important consideration when we think about all of the spaces and the events in the downtown as a whole. Certainly, there are a number of events that happen in Gage Park, a number that happen in Garden Square. Rosalie would be an additional space for use in the downtown if we were to ensure that it was a proper purpose-built space and it provided additional access to staging, electricity, washrooms. There's a whole host of amenities that would be required. You know, the impact on the downtown core and the economic impact and whether people would still come to events, I think we'd have to do a bit more consultation with those community groups to understand. As council has referred, if an event was in Gage Park, would people see it to be the same event if it was in Rosalie? Does it have the sort of the same feel and sort of history that would drive people to still come downtown? So I think it's a bigger question. What we've been talking about in events and economic development and culture is really doing a review of all of the public open spaces in the downtown and identifying sort of the best use for each of those individual spaces. And I think that's what council's sort of saying today. You know, what is the highest and best use for Gage Park? What is it for Garden Square? What could it be for Rosalie? So that we could look at some sort of system that would allow for, whether it's a downtown event special event permit or something that would focus on harm reduction in the parks where events may be negatively impacting, and then the possibility of maybe actually increasing activity in the downtown with the addition of Rosalie if it did provide new amenities and services that currently aren't offered in the downtown. So I do think there's a bigger opportunity to look at events as a whole in the downtown and all of the spaces, so that we can best maintain the natural assets that we have because they're part of a bigger tourism, downtown, community effort in building, but certainly recognizing the positive economic impact and community pride and attachment of the events in the downtown. So we wouldn't want to limit the level of activity, but certainly I think there's a risk of reducing participation if we were just to sort of take A and move it over to B and assume.
Thank you. And through the chair, I'm glad you mentioned that. And you were naming off a number of areas, but one area we haven't really looked at is Kenwillan Square. And I'm not aware of the long-term plans for that square, but the size and the square footage of that is quite significant if it was redone in a way to accommodate people and events there as well. And I wonder if that is an option. I know we're looking at investigating how to preserve the park through increased maintenance, but I wonder if there's also an opportunity to look at Kenwillan Square as a possible location to, you know, take on some of those events. Because it is a large space, you know, and highly underutilized.
Sorry, through the chair, I should have included Kenwillan Square in that list of downtown spaces, as well as Daily Times off the Conservatory too. Smaller space. There's the laneways and the desire to see those activated in the downtown as a whole. So I do think that perhaps there could be a review of all of the open spaces in the downtown, identifying what amenities, resources, infrastructure each of those spaces have, what those special considerations like the park maintenance or sensitivities in different areas, and then perhaps put together a downtown matrix of, you know, this is sort of the type of opportunity that's best suitable to this space, and try to work that out. I think that we don't have sort of facility usage policy for each of these outdoor spaces, and perhaps its time in a growing city would demand on for event space, and event space being at a premium right now in the city. That perhaps it's time for staff to do sort of that open park space in the downtown facility usage and prioritization.
Thank you. That'd be great. Through you, Chair, I think it would be great to really look at even the money that we would be using to upgrade Rosalie Park to accommodate. How can we do that now for Kenwillan Square to make it more accessible for sound, audio, and even kind of taking out some of the concrete or something, or adding more. I don't know. There are professionals that can design this, but looking at that as an option so that we're not looking at making the jump for the events that are coming up and so on.
Thank you, Councillor Williams.
The two suggestions that were just made by yourself of vehicles, heavy vehicle use of the park, and Councillor Willen's suggestion, I would take those as friendly to the point number 2. So maybe as we hear the next speakers, the clerk can wordsmith that to save him time.
Thank you, Mayor. And speaking to the report and the recommendations as amended, Councillor Medeiros.
Thank you, through the chair. To staff, I think, besides our environmental consciousness that we've raised here and we've assured, and as we're staunch protectors of the environment, but we found a way to still use our downtown park. But the conundrum still stays. It's still there, meaning what group gets to use it and what group doesn't. So I'm not suggesting all of a sudden we're going to get 20 groups lined up who want to use it. That's not what I'm suggesting. But what I'm suggesting is this council moves forward with looking at gentle ways of using it, or using it throughout, maybe, I don't know, put a number or limitation. It's to staff to develop that criteria. So as we struggle with the grants and who gets what, is who gets the access. And it's an attractive setup. It's attractive from the perspective, if you see some of the events there, where you have the space and you set up little vendors that go around and around, and that's attractive, and you have a beer garden flowing, and you have a stage. That is attractive to many events. And if that becomes sort of the use, one of the things I'd like to see in the staff report come back is, especially during the bigger events, how many calls do we get from bylaw in terms of noise complaints? I know during the whole Pokemon craze, which I thought was probably the best thing since sliced bread in Brampton, seeing all these youth downtown, I probably had more calls than any time I've been a councillor, because people didn't like all the people downtown walking through their neighborhood, all the noise, and etc. So that's kind of the consideration. And then after, the criteria has to come back. I guess, when you look at try aligning it with our grants, where you have the, whatever you call the Renaissance, or what are those large?
Marquee.
The what?
Marquee.
The marquee, okay, the marquee groups. And so it becomes, again, the question of equity. And this is sort of the challenge. And, I guess you'll come back with the report and look at how we can equitably offer this. But again, this is quite the difficulty, is it? And I guess members of council, on one end, we're suggesting, this is a gem, and we want, groups to keep using it, but do we want newer groups to use it as well? Do they not get that same equity? Again, I was born and raised here, but, the community I belong to is maybe not as longer as other community groups, and there are newer community groups who should have the same access, and that's kind of the struggle I have internally. And then after, I think, Rob brings an amazing point. Ultimately, family and kids. Ultimately, it's a passive park. Ultimately, it's a place where people can go spend a friendly Saturday and Sunday. And, the park use, if we're doing events and the frequency, that takes away from the opportunity, as we know our summers are short. Anyways, this is almost a Shakespearean play in itself. So I look forward to the feedback and the report that comes back, and I thank you. So this is quite the difficult one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sir Shakespeare. Councillor Willens, again.
Yeah, thank you. Just quickly, just to be clear on the for the most, I guess he was waiting, that the independent study that was done on the impact of the park in 2008, was it, Rob, or 2007?
Through the chair, it was 2008, but we just had another one done in 2019 in July.
Okay, so maybe a review
So we can bring that one. That was part of the report.
Okay, so maybe review those independent studies then.
Correct.
And maybe when we bring the report back, I'm glad Councillor Williams brought up Ken Willen Square, because we had a very good presentation on the revitalization of Ken Willen Square. And I was kind of pleased because staff had came to me and asked me if our family would be okay if they redesigned Ken Willen Square. And of course, I said, of course, that'd be great. But at least they came to me and asked me. But anyway, besides from that, but because it was a very good plan. It talked about making it more accessible. It talked about providing a lot more power for events down there. It talked about removing that wall where the kids skateboard on and making it more, so basically making it look like Garden Square, but kitty corner on the opposite way, and it sort of complemented Gage Park. So maybe we could dig that up, if we could. I think Mr. Corbett was the CAO back then, and I think it may have been brought forward from either Jane or Joe Patushka at the time. But it was all part of the Downtown Reimagine, but it had nothing to do with the infrastructure that we had to do in downtown to do Downtown Reimagine. It was added on, so it opened up that whole area. So it gave the ability to close the streets off rather than having big, large groups into Gage Park. You could close it off and filter them down. But look at that if you could. It was a really good report.
Just through the chair, I'll talk to planning.
Now it may, yeah, okay. Good, thank you.
Because I think I've heard of the report.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I was going to ask whether or not you were looking for further studies to be done, but the clerk has adjusted and wordsmithed it to previous independent studies.
Perfect, thank you.
Councillor Medeiros, you have a further amendment?
Yes, Chair, thank you. So I guess to the mover of the motion would just to be that staff, as I suggested, come back with criteria of who, in terms of use, what organizations or what would be sort of the specs around it.
I think that's a friendly amendment to look at everything you've heard today on that front.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Medeiros. Members of Council, we're just waiting for the final amendment to be added as point 5. So, members of Council, you have the report before you with the included amendments. And previous item number 2 and number 3 have been stricken. I see no further questions. The report is moved by Mayor Brown, and all those in favor. Councillor Pleshy, are you? Carried. Thank you. We, members of council, we previously dealt with item 9.2.3. Item 9.2.4 and 9.2.5 were dealt in the consent agenda. Our next item is item 9.2.6, a staff report regarding the maintenance, improving, and celebrating local water bodies, all wards. Do members have questions or comments on the staff report? Mayor Brown.
Thank you, Councillor Vicente. I was the one that put forward this motion originally based on the success we had with the reduction of phosphorus levels in Lake Simcoe when I was serving as a public servant up there. What I was hoping to get in this report, I think this is a good start, is more of a timeline on when we could do some of this work. And I understand from the report there are water bodies that certainly aren't under our jurisdiction, just getting to the right report. But I think the ones that are within our domain that we should be having a timeline for. So the ones that are under the Conservation Authority, obviously that's a partnership. But the ones like Loafers or Professors Lake that are within our domain, I would like a timeline of how we're going to deal with some of the challenges we have with those water bodies. So we used to say up at Lake Simcoe, the goal was in 2006, how do you get it back to 1950 levels in terms of the water quality? I want to have that same challenge here. How do we get that water quality back to the 1950s when Doug Willens was a young kid running around the city swimming without thinking of the negative aspects of use of our water bodies. And I know people still use Professor's Lake, but I was at the neighborhood association barbecue this summer, and they're all saying they don't feel comfortable, and they had concerns. They mentioned a number of concerns they had with the water, and I want a plan of what it's going to take. And I realize there's going to be cost contained in it, but it's one thing to be a council that says we care about the environment and proud to sign things like our climate obligations, and it's good that we're looking at emission reductions, but at the same time we've got to take care of our own house. We've got to take care of our own environmental jewels in the city, and I want people to come and look at Brampton and say, just like we were planting trees, I want them to see beautiful green spaces, but I want them to see water bodies that are healthy, water bodies that no one will take a second hesitation to say, yeah, I'd love to utilize that water body. So I'm not sure what the amendment would be, but I just sort of like it to be brought back to us before this year's budget. I'm looking to the clerk for some guidance on the wordsmithing, brought back before this year's budget cycle of what the cost would be and a timeline for the rehabilitation of the water bodies under our direct control.
Through you, Mr. Chair, so perhaps the motion could be receive the report, but also request staff to report back in time for the 2020 budget approval on a plan, cost, and timeline for improving the water quality of the city-owned and operated water areas to bring them back to a healthy state.
Because I think with stormwater management, you outlined that there's already a plan in place, so I think it's the other ones that I sort of want to know what could be achieved during the mandate of this council. Is it achievable that we could do this over a 4-year period like we did up in, like was done up in Lake Simcoe? Yeah.
Through the chair, I think we can do. Okay. That's very possible.
Okay, thank you.
I don't want to swim anywhere with Doug Willems. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for bringing this forward. And so I've gone through the report, and I understand Heart Lake, and I've had a conversation with Mr. McKenzie there, the CAO of TRCA, and there is some attention from the TRCA's point of view that we need to look at the Heart Lake Conservation Area, and it's out of our purview, but there's a lot that's happening in that area now, which so I look forward to continuing the work with TRCA, City of Brampton with the responsibility of the development, and currently we're working with multiple players in that area to make that whole location look and feel a lot better, and better for animals and wildlife in the area. Loafers Lake, though, I don't know if though you may recall this when we were younger and we could go on the paddle boats out on Loafers Lake, right? And they had that big fountain out there that kind of sprayed the water, aerated, and moved stuff around. And that had slowly over time gotten smaller and smaller and smaller, and then essentially it was kind of like a bubbler, like a dock bubbler. And I think that's kind of what's there now, and that may be putting the air into it, but it's certainly not like the Lake of Dreams chute geyser that's 50 feet in the air, that thing. But I see Loafers Lake, and with the opportunities that it has with the Etobicoke Creek, so other opportunities. And if that may be where we need to take a complete, restoration of this lake in terms of pulling out the shoreline and putting in the vegetation that is required around there. If we need to excavate and make that lake a little bit deeper so that we can get more of the long life of the wildlife and other species in there, and maybe with an opportunity of an inlet and outlet, and the stream and the lake can play off each other and work. And I see the benefits of that. I don't know what it would be, how we could do that, have that inlet and outlet. That creek's a little bit lower. I don't know if we've ever even looked at that. Have we, Rob?
Through the chair, I'm not sure that we did. I know, I'm going to say about 8 years ago, TRCA came in and revamped the creek to meander more so that it could clean the water out.
Yep.
But I would think through Michael and TRCA, I think we could look at what can be done and then bring that back with obviously either a budget amendment or through budget process for 2020, a number that would be able to at least start the work, and maybe a 4-year plan to make sure that these all are addressed.
Mm-hmm. And I know there are a number of things in front of the board at TRCA right now that they're looking at, trying to do that shoreline restoration and make opportunities better for not only the wildlife but people to go and visit and enjoy. And it screams, healthy living. When we have, a stone throw just on the other side of the creek on the bridge, we have that massive, huge area where we got the outdoor equipment, and I'm going there all the time right now, and everybody's on the machines. It's fantastic to see. We almost need to maybe look at putting more machines there in next year, but we can talk about that after. But I think this is definitely a conversation TRCA would love to have with the city. There's lots of opportunities right now that are happening outside of Brampton with the TRCA. So this is, I think, a great opportunity to bring them closer in and have them provide their input on this as well.
Absolutely. Through the chair, I know we are working with TRCA with Professor's Lake and that shoreline, and I think we can expand it to all the bodies of water.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Members of Council, we're still considering the report 9.2.6, and up on your screen is an additional recommendation as put forward by the Mayor. Speaking to the report and to the recommendation, Councillor Willens.
Thank you, through you, Chair. There's not many places I didn't swim when I was a kid in Brampton, including the Tobico Creek. Thank you, Mayor Brown, for adding this in there. But in terms of the report, I wouldn't spend a lot of time on stormwater management ponds. I think how we use them now is good, the passive use of them around it. We, Council Palesh and I, both know how we feel about stormwater management ponds, because stormwater management ponds probably, I think, are going to be addressed in our community energy and emissions plan, are they not, Michael? I think in terms of, well, that's district energy, it's another term, the advantage of district energy. But anyway, I wouldn't spend a lot of time on that, but I'm happy to, with the report or with the addition of item 2 there. And I guess it's going to tell us the cost too, eh? Yeah, costing, okay. Costings are in there. I think Councilor Pletchy's dead on with the Loafers Lake. I think that's the only thing you can do is dredge it, make it deeper, because it is a shallow lake, so that's all you could do with it there, is make it deeper, and that would help keep it cleaner for a long period of time. But anyway, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Willens. Next speaker, Councillor Bowman.
Thank you very much, through you, Mr. Chair. Don't dredge Heart Lake too deep, because you'll disturb the legendary Heart Lake monster that lives there, and that's a major tourist attraction there. So, I've seen, Rob, just recently, there was an article that I read on, that's Heart Lake, come on aerators that go on the bottoms of lakes that actually aerate the bottom and remove some of the trash and the plastics, blow them up to the top where they can be skimmed off. Have we looked at anything like that, or is that a possibility? Or
Through the chair, I'll have to circle back with staff to see if that, I know we've used bubblers, but the bubblers are not at the bottom.
Yeah, these ones go right at the bottom, and so they force everything up, the trash that's down there.
We'll definitely look into those as well at the same time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Just quickly, I'll touch base with Michael, but I just came to mind, there was a company that I met through my previous life that did this clean water, and it was through vegetation, through certain things, but they told me at that time they could clean Lake Ontario up in 7 years. But the issue was Rochester's dumping too much stuff on the other side of the border. But for our local bodies of water, this could be an option. I'll see if I can find the information on that, and I'll pass it on to Michael.
All in favor? Carried. Members of council, we received a copy of the Brampton School Traffic Safety Council summary of recommendations from November 7, 2019. These committee recommendations were distributed to members prior to the meeting, as the Safety Council met after the original publication of today's meeting agenda. Do any members have questions or comments on the committee recommendations? Seeing none, may I have someone move to approve the recommendations? Councillor Fortini? All those in favor? Carries. Members of council, we're now at item 9.3.2. This is a motion first introduced at the October 30th, 2019 Committee of Council meeting for consideration at today's meeting. Councillor Willen, since you introduced the motion, we can begin with you. Councillor Willen.
Yes, to you, Chair, just for clarification, I'd like to correct the minutes. As noted, it was Councillor Paleshi actually that gave this. He was absent that day. He was sick at home. So if we could correct the minutes, maybe, Peter, that it was brought forward by Councillor Paleshi. I was just doing it for him.
So noted. Councillor Paleshi, you are the mover of the motion. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess it's, it's a lot of other municipalities right now are stepping up, and I think this touches all of us around this table a little bit close to heart. When you see a school bus pulled over and the sign comes out, and then you see a car go by, your heart skips a beat. And in your mind, it's an automatic reaction that, what if your child was getting off the bus and went across, or what if your child was coming over onto, and it's a little bit close to home, I think, for all of us. And I think that it's about time, with technology that's currently out there, that we become a part of the discussion on how we ensure that nobody gets hurt and nobody gets killed. And essentially, what you want to happen is for this to be implemented and it to get out to the public, and then nobody ever does that anymore. And that would be the perfect world. But unfortunately, distracted driving has now officially surpassed drinking and driving and all other driving-related offenses. So it's extremely unfortunate that this is kind of the way technology has steered driving habits, and this is essentially asking us to support technology to combat that, and hopefully this today and future discussions with respect to Vision Zero and other municipalities, and having those discussions saves lives. And that's why I brought it here before us today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, thank you, and I'll support the motion. Thank you, Councillor Paleshi. I just had a couple of questions for staff, because I remember I sat on the school safety. We came up, going back about 3 years ago, that there's going to be cameras set up on the school buses, and the company pays for it, and it's a 50-50, actually the first 3 years it goes to them, and then it's a 50-50 split. And hoping, Mississauga started, I think we're supposed to start ours this year. Is that still on? Do we know? Councillor Palechi's right. A lot of the kids just run across the street. They don't understand, and the cars have to know. It's big fines now. They got to be very careful.
Through the chair, I'll have to go back with staff and see if that's the case.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, just quickly, thank you, Councillor Paleshi, for bringing this forward. You talk about how we cringe. I had the unpleasant situation with my own daughter. She was narrowly missed by a vehicle that ran a school bus. So if it wasn't for I don't think that gentleman will be running school buses again, because the hydro guys stopped to assist, but I'll leave it at that. But thank you for bringing that forward, Councillor Paleshi.
All right, members of council, you have the motion before you. I see no further questions. Recorded vote has been requested. Mr. Clerk? Standing.
All in favor of the motion as shown on the screen, please stand to be counted. Showing in favor is Mayor Brown, Councillor Fortini, Councillor Williams, Councillor Medeiros, Chair Vicente, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Paleshi, Councillor Willens, and Councillor Santos. Mr. Chair, the motion carries unanimously, 9-0.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. May I have a motion to receive our next item, item 9.4.1, letter from Mayor Alan Thompson, moved by Councillor Paleshi. All those in favor? Carried. We are now at councillor question period. Do any members have questions of staff regarding matters within the jurisdiction of this section? Seeing none, we have public question period. Do any members of the public have any question regarding any item in this section? Seeing none, I'm now happy to turn over the chairing of the next section of the meeting to Councillor. No, you want us to continue? All right, we will continue. All right. So we are now moving forward with the community services section. We have no staff presentations. So our next item is item 10.2.1. Surplus declaration of easement rights over city lands for sanitary sewer infrastructure in order to facilitate the development of the lands located at the northwest corner of Countryside Drive and Heart Lake Road by 225600 Investments Limited in Ward 2. Do I have any questions from members? Councillor Willens.
I would just move the report, please.
Councillor Willens is moving the report. Do any other members have questions on this report? Seeing none. All in favor of the report and its contents? Carried. Item 10.2.2 was under the consent agenda, I'm sorry. And we're now moving on to councillor question period. Are there any questions from members of council? Are there any questions from members of the public? Seeing none. We're on to item 11, the referred matters list. Do any members have questions with regards to the referred matters lists? Seeing no questions from members, we're back up to item number 12, public question period. Any members of the public have questions? Seeing none. So members of council, we're now at item number 13, closed session. Do we have closed session items that need? We have no closed session items, so our next item is adjournment. Thank you, members of council, for your respectful consideration and recommendations today. And thank you, staff, for your information and advice. Today's recommendations will be presented to City Council for approval at the next regular meeting on November the 30th, 2019. May I have a motion to adjourn today's meeting? Councillor Santos, very eager. All in favor? Carries. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.